do consider speeding up with settings to consume this content in a fraction of the time. Newbie Dice Podcast.
What's up, buddies? This is Mike.
And I'm Keith.
And Marcelo.
And I'm Paige. Welcome to another episode of Newbie Dice Podcast. This is episode number 7, and we're going to talk about the various types of lists and how they perform at the US Masters. So we have Mike Rossi here coming in from the Northeast, and he played one of 8 or 9 dwarves at the US Masters. I knew it was 9, but I was looking at the list. I only saw 8, so maybe one player dropped, but doesn't matter whether it's 8 or 9.
Yeah, it was a last minute substitution. Somebody dropped and a dwarf player filled his place to make 9.
All right.
So, yeah.
So it's 9. And we do have Keith, who's the infamous elves player. For better or worse, he's the most well-known elves player, and he did take elves to the US Masters. And we have Marcelo, who took an army that's very dear to my heart, which is Order of the Green Lady. You can see from my background image over here, that's my Order of the Green Lady army. And he did very well at Masters too. So we're and that's representing Alpha Strike, while elves are representing the shooting lists. So without further ado, let me just get the screen ready. And yeah, let's go through this. Grind, Shooting, and Alpha Strike lists at the US Masters 2023.
Oh, nice graphic.
Thank you. So let's start off with introductions. Mike, you're from the Unplugged Radio podcast crew. So give us a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure. I've been playing Kings of War since Warhammer imploded. Before that, I started playing Warhammer Fantasy back in 1995, and I've been playing mostly dwarves as my Kings of War army of choice. I dabble in other armies every once in a while, ogres and Trident Realms this year, a couple other ones previously, but dwarves is my main axe. So, I've been
right.
Yeah, and so I've been to every Masters, and I've taken dwarves to every Masters so far.
Awesome. That's one of the reasons why I invited you too. You have been staying true and faithful to dwarves. So you can feel the iterations and the various clash packs and how it affects your army as dwarves. Yes. All right. With that, we have Marcelo. Do introduce yourself.
Like Mike, I'm also a Warhammer Fantasy refugee. I actually started playing that game in Australia before 2000. I was playing primarily Bretonnian, so even then it was Alpha Strike. Mm-hmm. Elves was ranked number 1 in the Australian rankings for a number of years. I represented Australia in the European 10 Championships for Warhammer Fantasy. So I always liked to make sure I had beautiful models to play with, which meant that I didn't always paint them myself, but always play very competitively, and I've always enjoyed the gaming aspect a little bit more than the hobby aspect, although I do love painting miniatures as well.
Awesome. And I did see you win second in paint at the US Masters with army you painted all by yourself.
No, so that I'm going to hand over to Kat Roya, who is the one that painted over half that army. So I will not keep that flag because I don't feel like I deserve it.
Right. So have you been playing out of the Green Lady, or rather Brotherhood, since you came over to Kings of War?
Yeah, I've been playing Kings of War for about 2.5 to 3 years, roughly. Oh. And I've played Brother Mark almost exclusively. My last 2 Masters were with Brother Mark. Mm-hmm. And I only started playing Order of the Green Lady in March this year. I had Jeff Traish, who, like myself, is a Battle Pilgrim. It's a club that we started back in Australia many years ago. And Jeff Traish came from Australia to participate in the Pilgrimage, which is a Philadelphia tournament that we ran early March. And Jeff is, a buddy and a friend that I played for many years. And he said to me, look, if you want to play competitively, you got to leave Brother Mark on the side and you got to play with Green Lady. And he's like an army to get you started. And he gave me my first green lady, and I've done many iterations and many changes since then. But the thinking of, how to play more competitively with a better list, it's a stronger list. Green lady's a much stronger list than Brother Mark. And I haven't enjoyed it for the months that I've been running it.
Right. You said you have only been playing Kings of War for about 3 years. So what happened in that gap between Warhammer imploding and you taking up Kings of War?
I moved countries. I left Australia and I moved to Philadelphia in the US about 10 years ago. And I was playing 40K and War Machine, and I didn't really know that Kings of War existed. I didn't know there was an alternative to Warhammer Fantasy until about 3 years.
Right. Who introduced you to Kings of War?
Some players here in the PA region. We were going to a gaming store, and in this gaming store, we were playing other things. We were playing War Machine and other games. And I came across somebody who said, there is an alternative to Warhammer Fantasy. And I've always loved rank and file. And I thought, oh, wow. And, I really, truly believe that Kings of War is a better game than Warhammer Fantasy ever was.
Yeah.
So I love the gaming system. I love I used to play chess competitively, and the concept of having something that's easy to learn, but has a lot of depth and it's hard to master. That's Kings of War. So I love it.
Definitely. So welcome to the Kings of War community, and great that someone's carrying the Kings of War flag out there, recruiting newer players, and Marcelo's doing quite well at the US Masters right now. So next up, we have the infamous Keith. That's you don't need any introduction, but let's do it anyway.
I'm infamous because I got really, really drunk when third dropped. I complained about elves. Other than that, I'm generally uneventful. I've been playing Kings of War since the transfer. Played Warhammer maybe 5 or 6 years before that. Played at 7 of the 8 US Masters I've been to. I played elves, and I hit the 1 year after third dropped. I defected to Kingdoms of Men for a minute and just brought War Machines instead of an army. So decided to feel bad about myself. But I mostly played elves, except for some online forays into Kingdoms of Men and Green Lady.
Green Lady, yeah, we had a Green Lady off on Call to Arms one on the year of COVID.
Yeah.
All right. So you have been playing a lot of elves, right?
Elves
Why
all
elves?
The time, yeah. They're very predictable. You get closer to your average when you get reroll dice. Elite makes bad rolls closer to average, and good rolls great sometimes. So I always liked the elite army look, even back in the Warhammer days.
Right.
I think shooting it gives you a lot of advantages, being able to control the board with some ranged threats. And I'm not smart enough to understand what a corkscrew is, so I don't have to use it in an army that shoots. So
right. So just a quick one about myself. I did start Warhammer 8th edition in 2012. Played it for a year, didn't like it. So yeah, my Singapore, they just started going to ETC. So they're playing with ETC rules. And I played for 1 year, didn't like it. It was Lizardman. So I was pretty good for being a newbie, but I didn't like it. So I went into War Machine, dabbled in that for 3 years. And that was when Kings of War, Warhammer exploded. And then War Machine also came out with its 3rd edition, which I started to feel a little burnout by the game because it is quite a gotcha game. You have to remember all the rules of all of the opponent. Oh, he gets +2 inches on the charge, and that's the difference between winning and losing, whether you remember he has that ability, right? So that's when I already heard of Kings of War. I had a demo game in, and that's when I went back into Kings of War and has been playing since 2015 or 16. So that's about 6 or 7 years already. Yeah. So with that, let's move on to our list. Let's go to hobby updates first, right? Let me just scratch that out.
Yeah, I'm not Master Site. That's
that used to be.
Oh, you asked
Adam
him first.
Ballard. I just changed the template.
That's fine. You asked him first.
All right. So, yeah, anyone's doing any hobby lately, Mike?
If anyone listens to the Unplugged radio, they know that I'm pretty weak when it comes to hobby stuff. I'm actually working on a new army. I have a bunch of 3D printed sculpts that I'm doing right now, just a couple Forest Shambler units that I'm putting together, with the idea being that I'm going to do a lot of elemental units over the course of this year, because a lot of armies have those as components of their list, right? And so if I was to build a Forces of Nature army, essentially what I'm doing is I'm building the first 1,000 points of elves, Sylvankin. You go through the list of other armies that use those, because I'm getting kind of burnt out on dwarves, especially after the Masters, and we'll talk about it today. I think there is some, at least the way that I play them, I think that there's some serious problems with the list, right? I know that they're good, but it's a real issue. So,
right. Marcelo, what about yourself?
I've been getting into firefight lately. So I've been putting together a GCPS firefight list. I've been really enjoying the game. I normally put the models together. I don't have enough time to paint them, so I give them to Kat Royer to paint the models for me. And as I'm adding units to my Kings of War army, then they're also sitting on Kat's desk. So, but personally, I put together my GCPS models, which I've been enjoying.
Awesome. Yeah, the Marines are newer sculpt, so they're quite crisp. All right, what about Keith?
I'm still working on making my elves into a fully Mantic army. I have regiment. I have the formation in Mantic Dracons. I've put together with some kit bashing 8 more Dracons for two hordes that I like to play with. So slowly moving towards a fully Mantic elf army. So that's mostly what I'm working on.
So you'll be like in the same color scheme and all? You're just slowly converting unit by unit?
Like I have a pan-elven world. I'll have way too many Dracon units, but they'll all be different models, but similarly based. In case I ever want to put 8,000 points on the table or something stupid like that. So
right. I'm working on goblins, Mantic goblins. So I've been trying to do Mantic armies going forward, right? Just to support. So these are some of the older troll scouts.
Those are cool.
Yep. So yeah, taking part in Rob Fanu's Countercharge Slow Grow Challenge. And there's one by Blackjack Legacy as well. So I'm just submitting the same paint jobs for both challenges. All right, with that, let's move on to our lists. So Rob, the granddaddy of Kings of War podcast content, has been churning lots of Masters coverage. So I thought that I'll just supplement that with a bit more tactical coverage and insights with our 3 esteemed guests over here. We have Mike with his Grindy Dwarf list, and we have Marcelo with, type spelling error over there. And we have Marcelo with the Alpha Strike Green Lady list, and we have Keith with his Elves list. So we're gonna go down player by player, because I thought as a listener it would be easier to follow if we just follow one player through his entire Masters run before moving to the next.
Okay.
Right. If you're following on video, you get to see the lists on screen. It's a little bit easier to follow. So let's start off with Mike. Let's talk about your lists first. Okay. So your list. Would you like to read off your list, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So I had 2 regiments of Iron Guard. They're the defense 6, hitting on 3s unit, both with throwing mastiffs. 3 sharpshooter troops, a mastiff hunting pack with throwing mastiffs. Dogs that shoot dogs is the way to go. Gollux Fury to hold the line together. A flame priest with the diadem of Dragonkind and the upgrade. So essentially he, for 110 points, has Fireball 16. So he hits like a flame belcher, but doesn't suffer from a lot of the problems that war machines have. I stole that idea from Greg Person. I steal a lot of ideas from him. And that dude was money in some of the matchups. He was great. Favorite Ironheart, because he's fantastic. 2 Dwarf Lords on Large Beast. One with the Orb of Towering Presence to give him unit strength 2. One with the Trickster's Wand. I found that with height 4, it's very hard for enemy mages to hide. and that range makes it so you can kind of pick them out and stick it to them pretty good. I also took the formation. So that comes with 2 regiments of bulwarkers with throwing mastiffs, an ironclad horde. I gave them the hammer of measured force. Both of those, or all 3 of those units, have melee 3.
Oh,
yeah. Well, they have melee 3, right? And that's one of the things the formation gives you. And then the standard bearer gives them all elite. He has a range of, an aura of elite for infantry. So it's 15 units, 13 of them score, 25 unit strength. It's very similar to what I took last year to the Masters. And I think I was not one of the first, but in reaction to Glade Stalkers, I was like, fine, defense 6. I'm going to throw dogs at you. What are you going to do? Right. Given the limitations of what dwarves can do, that seemed like the best way to go. A couple things to note. There were 8. Originally, there were 8. Eventually, there were 9 dwarf lists at Masters this year. I think that some of the minor changes that were made to the way the formation works and the cost reduction on the dwarf Lord on Large Beast made it so they were a good option, especially in a shooting heavy meta. At least that was the thought. The downside is that I'm going to write an article about this for Dash 28, but I did an analysis of the dwarf lists that were brought, the original 8. 6 of those 8 lists had the same 2,050 points. So every single list, except for the last unit or 2, was a cookie cutter of the next list over. That's a problem. That speaks to a problem with the internal balance of the dwarf list, right? And when you have Glade Stalkers and a lot of shooting, there's really no reason to take Berserkers. There's no reason to take Brocs. They're going to get shot off. Dash 18, TC1. It's not enough. I know the dash is nice, but you see him on the table, Keith is licking his lips going, 3 points for me, right? Good matchups, anybody that wants to come out and fight, but not too much. Bad matchups, tongue in cheek, I would say anybody faster, but everybody's faster. A real bad matchup is an army that doesn't have to commit, right? It doesn't have to commit. It has a lot of flying units. It can really pick me off. Defense 6, you pay a lot for the difference between defense 5 to defense 6. I don't think you get the utility. I don't think you get the value. And in some ways, I'd rather have defense 5 and another 4 or 5 points of nerve. Boogeyman lists are the same as, yes, or be slightly faster. Why are halflings faster than me, right? Boogeyman lists, I don't know, man. I mean, this year, everybody talked about Radigan's 8 hordes of this, 7 hordes of Alohi. Anything I think that spams is tough for dwarves if it skews on the right thing.
Right.
The problem is pressure. We're going to talk about that when I talk about my games, right? Is where the good matchups are, where the bad matchups are. And I think the dwarf list has a tough time projecting threat after turn 2.
Right.
At least the way that I play. So,
well, anyone, if you have any questions or things to chime in on, feel free to do so. For me, I think the most interesting part about your list is that Flame Priest with Diadem. So it's good to hear that it's been working for you. And in terms of applying pressure for the dwarves, I think the units that apply the most pressure is the sharpshooter troops, right?
Right.
If they cannot withstand being shot by sharpshooters round after round, they would have to come forward to engage. I did face that against Alex Chavez in the same Masters list. He had 4 troops of sharpshooters, and I faced that with goblins in the Explorers UB tournament.
Right.
And so my goblins have lower range shooting overall compared to his 36-inch. So I had to come forward because if not, he would shoot off my slasher and all that. So I had to push forward. So I think the main pressure applicator for dwarves are the sharpshooter troops, and they're just so good, right? That's why there's no reason to take anything else, because they shoot from far away. They have piercing 2, they score, and that's everything's money there. Yeah,
and they're more consistent than a cannon, right? I mean, you'll find that like a cannon will have hot rounds, but a sharpshooter troop, because it's 5 shots hitting on 4s, you're going to do 1 or 2 wounds every turn. And if I have a couple of them, by turn 2, I'm putting real pressure on a big unit, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so what you'll find is that, stealthy kind of sucks, but
against cannons, though, it ruins them.
Yeah.
And stealthy and sharpshooters you manage.
That's right. Okay. So I'll do 1.5 wounds instead of 2. We're fine here. It's not a big deal. I do find that the way that the list works, having run it a boatload of times, is the sharpshooters will put long range pressure on. And so right from the beginning, I picked the biggest thing out there, the big scary thing that I can see. Your height 4, man, Frostfang Cavalry, hate that, right? I can take anything that's height 4 and just start plinking away at it, right?
Yep.
By the second turn, I'm going to remove your big thing, right? If you don't come forward or if you don't hide them in cover or whatever. The second thing, though, after that is the next round. And when you move up to advance, I usually will take 3 or 4 units with the Mastiff packs, right? And they're all next to each other. So I'm going to take the middle of your line and I'm going to blow a hole in it, right? So I'm going to put 32 barks at you, and I'm going to remove 2 units by the time the lines clash, right? If I don't get that to work, I'm screwed,
right?
Because the army doesn't have enough. Like, you're going to charge in, you're going to pick a couple of my units off. I'm going to countercharge, but I'm fighting down now, right? And that's the problem with the list, is you're going to get the charge off on my entire line. And defense 6 sounds great. And yeah, I'll take the punch, but nothing in my army has crush 1. All of the units that have defense 6 don't have crush. All the units that have defense 5 don't have crush. If I want crush 1 on a unit, it's shield breakers and their defense 4, and you'll just shoot them off. Right. So that is the real problem with running the list. And I'm tired of having that problem, which is why I'm painting up something else. Right. Anyway, but like I said, we'll talk about it as the game goes on. Right.
The useful infantry do not have lots of killing power, say for your ironclad horde with hammer of measured force, because they're hitting on trees with elite in the formation, and then they're wounding on 4. So you're dealing 8-9 wounds consistently. That is if they survive, because as a horde frontage, they can get multi-charged easily. So you have to depend on your support pieces like the large beast with the Dwarf Lord and Faber Ironheart and even Gorlok's Fury itself to add that additional punch.
Right.
Yeah. With that, let's go in through your individual matchup. So we're just going to do an executive summary of each matchup. First is a Dwarf mirror match against Joseph Borghese. And he doesn't have the formation. So is he one of the lists that is significantly different?
So no, oddly enough, because he still took the Iron Guard, etc. Right. And so he actually took something very similar to what I took the previous year, where it was all Iron Guard. I skewed away from taking the formation. I got smarter since then. But just in terms of being able to have a little bit of board presence and decide where you die. But the key in this game, and this was actually streamed, so if anybody really wants to see what's going on, you can go watch the stream. But the key on this was we were playing Rays, and so the way the board was set up, I have to get to his side of the board to get the tokens, and there are 2 that I need to get on the right side and 1 on the left side. And then on his side, he's trying to get to 2 on my left side and 1 on my right side.
So is it opposite? The 2 tokens are deposited on the same side or on the opposite side?
They're on opposite side of each other, right? So I'm heavily weighted to the right. He's heavily weighted to the left. He starts setting up, and he sets up all of his Iron Guard on the left-hand side. He's going to, with Gallic and another Steel Behemoth, he's going to charge up. He's going to kill all my stuff, and he's going to own that part of the board. So I take all my sharpshooters. Once he puts Gallic down, I take all my sharpshooters and I put them in a spot where I can see Gallic. And then over the course of the game, I shoot Gallic every single opportunity I get until Gallic goes down. And all of a sudden he loses the Iron Resolve aura in the middle, and he loses his leadership in the middle.
Inspiring.
Right. And so at that point, when the lines clash, I'm actually able to do some tricky stuff with my Gallic's Fury and, remove a couple units. On the right-hand side, I run up the King and Faber and the other King. Right. And I run them up, and they're just running around being jerks. Right. And actually in anybody that's actually watching the podcast right now, you can see the picture at the end of turn 3, my King on Large Beast had charged all the way across the field and was punching his sharpshooters in the face. In the middle of the board. And so at that point, Joe's looking down and going, Rossi, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I made a mistake here. And at one point, so the other thing that I think this is an important point to make, when I was playing Joe, we were like, oh my God, we're going to be on stream. Who wants to see this? This is ridiculous. Right. And so we were kind of commiserating over it. And he said, man, I'm kind of nervous because I don't want anyone to see me make any mistakes on the screen. I said, don't worry about it. All they're going to see is me making mistakes. Nobody cares. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares. Right. There's 15 people are going to watch. One's your mom. Nobody cares. Right. But at one point though, so if you take a look, he had the one token that I'm trying to get on the left side of his field, on the left side of the table. He's moving up, and I have a king on large beast in the middle. This was at the end of turn 2. And he moves a unit of Iron Guard forward more than 3 inches away from that token. And I go, Joe. And I point at the token, right? And he goes, what? I go, Joe. And I point at my king on large beast, and I point at the token. He goes, oh, right? And he backs up and he turns, he goes, oh, thanks, Rossi, no problem. I said, don't worry about it. Just stay in the game. Don't worry about it. We're on, because he's still like, oh my God.
He's getting butterflies in his tummy for being on stream.
Yeah, but I was like, don't worry about it, man. Just this is because I played the Masters games the same way I play any game at any tournament. I'm like, dude, don't do that. It's stupid, right? Be better. And then there's another spot like down where during the scrum, one of the nice things about Gallic is he's height 5, and we were playing with draw at the tournament, right? And so at one point he's like, I'm going to move in here and I'm going to take this other unit Iron Guard. I'm going to flank one of your units, and that would have given me a rear charge with Gallic the next turn. I said, Joe, we're playing what we draw. I'm going to pull out and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make you sad. And he goes, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that. And he switched some stuff around, but it was important for me to have those moments with Joe because I love Joe, right? I've played him at other events and be like, don't let me do this to you, dude. He goes, oh yeah, we're playing with draw. I'm sorry, I forgot. Because he's been playing up in the Northeast and the mid-Atlantic based on the tournament you go to. Sometimes we play with it, sometimes you don't. Right. So I just had to remind him, like, this is what's going on here. Right. And it's funny because Keith was playing at the table next to me and I didn't want to bother him, but I'm like, we're playing with the draw, right? And he's like, yes, we are, Mike. Just stop being so loud. I was like, okay, no problem. Right. Went back to my game. But the key to this game was the Orb of Towering Presence on the King on Large Beast on the right-hand side. He murdered a bunch of stuff and he raised the 2 tokens on the left. He had a fancy breakthrough on the right, and he ended up, so he raises all those tokens. I raise all the ones on his side of the table, and my king with the 2 unit strength runs over to the middle and just stands on it. And he can't get more than 1 unit strength over there to fight me. And so I ended up winning the game by 1.
So you're just delaying him on the left so that you could hold the middle.
That's exactly it, right? That's exactly it. Just throwing stuff in the way, and I'm like, no big deal. So
I imagine it'd be a pillow fight with all the defense 6 and no crushing slapping at each other.
Right. But the interesting thing is that, so the King on Large Beast is, I think, appropriately costed now. Yes, it's defense 6. Yes, it's 15-17 nerve, but it has TC 2 and crush 1 and 7 attacks on 3s. So like it does 2 wounds after the first round of combat. Right. Like if it's hindered, it's screwed. And if it gets punched in the face, it's screwed. Right. So the only thing that does damage was Gallic and my horde of stuff with the hammer. But he was smart. He stayed away from that. I put it down on the slightly like offset to the right, and he put all his shit in the left. You know. So in terms of grind, this was an interesting thing. To your point about the pillow fight, there wasn't a lot of stuff. Like we both lost about 12 to 1,500 points of crap. Right. By the end of the game, it was kind of bloody, so
but
Mike, mostly,
you keep talking about not having any crushing strength. So why is it that you don't put brewer strength on the list? Why is that missing?
Right. So what essentially you're doing when you put the brewer strength on a list on a unit, let's say that has movement 4, is I'm going to get hit. You're going to do 5 wounds to me. Let's say. I'm going to hit you back. I have 12 attacks hitting on 3s. I hit you 8 times and I have crush 1. So I'll do 4 wounds to something with defense 5. You're going to hit me back. And now I'm in trouble. Now I'm in that wavery spot. I'm going to hit you back and do 4 wounds. And then you're going to pick the unit up.
Yeah. Basically the regiments only having 12 attacks aren't worth putting any items on. But Rossi did put Hammer of Measured Force on the Ironclad Horde. That's probably the only unit that is worth putting an item on. So the hammer works because it will do extra against defense 6. And against defense 4 or less, I don't think you're very worried because your units without crush can still take them out. Your mastiffs would massively hurt them. So yeah, I can see that instead of Hammer of Measured Force, Brew of Strength might work. Hammer of Measured Force is better in some situations and it's cheaper.
It depends,
and
right?
It's just not worth it on the regiments, right?
No, I don't think so. And so the other thing is the Ironclad Horde, and Keith will appreciate this. I've never used an army with elite that has that many attacks. So I'm like, oh, 25 attacks. It hits you on 3s. Boom. I'll take these 2 2s out of here. Reroll all these ones. Is this what elves are like?
Yes.
Oh, this is so easy.
Yes, it is.
Right? 25 attacks. I hit you 20 times and I'm going to wound you on 4s. Eat it.
Elves
right?
are amazing when you don't roll 2s. So it's like, wow,
Right?
it's like almost everything hits.
But it's not fair because the unit I'm running has 22, 24 with defense 5.
Yeah.
Right. Palace Guard would give their left arms for defense 5.
Right.
Of course, then they wouldn't be elite. It'd be very sad watching them try to throw their pikes around. Right. But anyway, so the game was great. Joe's fantastic. And the way that this worked, it was very grindy, to your point. Right.
Yeah.
We both lost the same amount of stuff. It was, if I didn't have the orb, I had one unit of sharpshooters that could have run to the middle as well to take the spot by the end of the game. So, I mean, it was kind of mine.
Looking at this picture, your ironclad was very close to the center. So if it makes it to the center, I guess it's very hard to move.
Yeah, so I made a mistake with that. So I actually had it set up in a spot where his sharpshooters in the middle could see it. And so he put a couple wounds on it. I was like, I blew that. And so he kept plinking wounds on it. I ended up having about 9 or 10 wounds when I finally killed the sharpshooters. I'm moving the horde into the middle, and he redirected. He had one mastiff pack that he threw at it, and then his remaining steel behemoth just shot me every turn until I picked the horde up. And at that point, I'm like, are you kidding me? So that was stupid play on my part, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was game 1.
Right.
I know we're supposed to be talking faster than that, but
we'll go faster from the next game onwards. But I did realize I did not read off Joe's list, so I'm just going to read it off very quickly. 4 Iron Guard regiments with mastiffs, 3 sharpshooter troops, Brock Rider regiments with Jesse J Boots, right? Godlock's Fury, and an additional vanilla steel behemoth, Faber Ironheart, and 2 Dwarf Lord on large beasts. So with that, let's go. So you won this game 15-6.
I did.
Raise, right? Round 2 is control. And you're up against Jeff O'Neill's Goblins. All right. And his list, 6 hordes of rebel, one of them with the wobble, 3 regiments of spitters, 1 with the fire oil, which does nothing because you have no regeneration, 3 big rocks thrower, 3 sharpstick throwers, 3 wingets, the shooting one, Groany Snark, 2 bangets, 1 comes with Mindfog 2, the other one comes with Wind Blast 6, and 3 wizards. They are each equipped, 1 with Conjuring Staff, 1 with Boomstick, and the other one has Alchemist Curse 2. He comes up to a total of 24 units, 12 of them score, and 27 unit strength. So what happened?
So Joe set up, and Jeff set up, and on the left-hand side, he had put, I think he does this. I would imagine that he just has a standard deployment that he just does, right? Where it doesn't matter. I could be a rando, faceless nobody on the other side of the table. He will do the thing he's going to do, right? Jeff, we ended up talking. He was a super nice guy, right? Like this, everything I say from now on is not an impugnment on his character. However, right? So on the left-hand side, he had set up a couple hordes. On the right-hand side, he had a couple hordes. In the middle, he had a couple hordes. He put some spitters and shit. None of that matters. He put 3 sharpstick throwers in the middle, and off to on the right side, to like set about a third in, was a building. On the right of that, he put all 3 of the big rock throwers, all 3 of the wingets, Groany Snark, the 2 bangets, the 3 whizzes, because I had put an extra unit over there, right? And so the game starts, and I'm going to control. So I move up, and I'm shooting with the sharpshooters, and I'm trying to do a little bit of damage. And I'm running forward with my Kings on Large Beast because they move a whopping 7. Everybody else is like, we're going to get there, right? And he just began to, I'm going to point at this unit, and you're going to pick it up. And I said, no problem. I'm pointing at this unit. You're going to pick it up. I'm pointing at this unit. You're going to pick it up. And I'm running as fast as I can. And it was Pickett's charge the entire time. And to be honest, I think I played it wrong. I mean, the only winning move is not to play, right? But like, I'm trying to play control. He has way more setups than I do. So by the time I'm done setting up my stuff, he has the rabble down, which is set, who cares? The spitters are down, who cares? And he puts down the 3 sharpstick throwers in the middle. So I'm done. And then he goes, I'll set everything over here, and I'll move the wingets up, and I'll kill everything, right? And he murdered all my crap. He murdered all of it. It was a very negative play experience. I will say it like that. I didn't have anything that could threaten besides the sharpshooters. Because by the time anyone else with dogs got close, they were dead. Right? It was demoralizing.
Was he picking up 2 units a turn?
He was picking up 1 unit a turn in the beginning and 2 units a turn near the end. Because I mean, once I get into I know over in Counter Charge that like Rob Finuff's new favorite word is the kill box. And so I don't know how to get out of the kill box, right? I don't know how to, because they move 4. So once I'm in the middle where I need to be.
And these tables have very little terrain. The terrain pieces were very small. They were super bare compared to what
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the people at home can't see, but you're talking like unit. Okay, tiny. So the tiny. If you had put a horde in the flat terrain, you would not have gotten cover because the horde was it wasn't more than 50% into the terrain, even if it covered the terrain.
Right.
So I wasn't getting a lot of help here. And it was empty in the middle. It was a sad state of affairs. So, and
it's
once
his
again,
best scenario and one of your worst too. Like control is exactly what he wants to see,
right?
And because he's going to set up on the back line and shoot you,
right? I normally smash people at control, right? But just it was a non-game, right? I killed a couple things.
What did you kill?
So I killed, if I remember correctly, the fireball guy murdered Grony. I killed a wing it. I killed 2 of the rabble hordes. I killed a couple spitters. I got my king on large beast into the sharp stick throwers and started flipping those over. Right. The guy with the trickster's wand is like, well, one of you whizzes isn't going to kill me. And the other 2 are like, but we will. Haha. Right. So it was,
you make it sound like it was super one-sided, but 15-6 is a pretty small loss.
Yeah.
Is it? Right?
Yeah.
It is because it starts from 14-7, right?
It starts from 14-7. Yeah. Right.
That's a very small draw.
Right. So
that's a very small loss.
It's a small loss. So at the end of the game, so he won. Now he wasn't able to kill all the stuff on the left-hand side, which was my saving grace, right?
Yeah.
I ended up losing the scenario, I think 4-3.
Yeah.
So it was close, right? Because I had murdered a lot of his rabble and stuff on the left-hand side. And so I had 3 of his, I had my middle and his 2 lefts, right? And then on the right-hand side, he had that plus my middle center with the wingets, right? So at the end of the game, he had killed like 1,100 points of crap or 10,000 or 1,000 points of stuff. And I had killed 650. So it was just, or like 550 or something like that. It was just before it would have gotten to a 16-5, right? Just before that. So I kind of scraped it up. Right. But it was me playing, I was tap dancing and I couldn't get anything to work, but the list is good. But to be honest, I don't think it matters who's on the other side of the table from Jeff. Jeff is a master at that. He knows what he's going to do. He's played it 1,000 times. He sets up the same way. He does the same thing, right? I mean, I knew, because I feel that way. Like when I'm running dwarves and I'm like, I'm in control. I set this up. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to do this. That unit's going to die over there. I'm going to take that. Like I can call out what's going to happen. And he was doing the same thing to me. And I was like, I don't like how that feels. Right. So,
you got your medicine back.
I did a little bit. I totally did. I'll be honest, right? I did not care for it. No.
Well, but the result says you did a lot better than what you're thinking.
Yeah, right. But it was tough. That being said, lovely dude, right? Lovely dude. I in all seriousness, I think that if there's a couple things that they could do. I don't know if the Army needs to be fixed. I mean, it's like, oh, did he win Masters? No. So obviously the Army's fine. Is it? Just in terms of like, I don't think I had any decisions to make over the course of the game.
Yeah, Jeff's goblins list is quite interesting because you did fight Carl later on, and his list is quite different. And even
very different.
The goblins list that I ran, which is similar to Steve Foster's, ours is a little bit more mixed arms, whereas he goes balls to the wall shooting. And especially in the triple big rocks and triple sharp sticks, because a lot of lists don't take as much of that now, but they are the
Right.
48-inch range war engines. Whereas if you fight other typical goblins list, it comes with trombones, which are shorter range, slashers, which are shorter range. So a lot of the goblins that you might see in general are much shorter in range. They have that 19-inch kill box, as you 17 to 19-inch kill box, right? The trombones
Right.
move up 5 and
Right.
breathes 12.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff's is the perfect list to take on your list as well, because his shooting outranges your sharpshooters as well. So
Sure.
he's picking up units. But you being dwarves, you do have quite a high amount of defense, which is why he couldn't clear it out. So he has to decide from the get-go which squares he's gonna forgo. That's why you are able to score on that side, and he just focuses all his firepower on taking out the other 2/3 of the board.
That's exactly it. Super smart, very efficient. I mean, just a master at work, right?
Yeah, and
a question for Mike. These were small loss, really. 6-15 is not a huge loss.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you had been playing in a more standard size terrain table, because the tables were almost bare.
Yeah.
Now, what difference do you feel that would have made?
I think it's funny. Like we don't have anybody that plays an army like Jeff's, or a lot of the armies in the Southeast are very shooting heavy, and we don't have a lot of people up here. At least I think in the Mid-Atlantic too that don't. We just don't run a lot of that, right? There's a lot of like, I want to punch you in the mouth stuff. So I think that if I had 10 reps against Jeff's list on a table with more terrain, I would have a much better understanding of how to set up and how to hide and when to push, right? And how to push, you know what I mean? And what units to push with, right? So I think that if the terrain was bigger, at least if I had something to hide behind in the middle of the table, right? I could have shielded myself a little bit to move a couple of my Iron Guard regiments that are unit strength 3 with defense 6. I could have moved them up in such a way that maybe they could have crossed the board at the end in the center and taken his middle, but it was very open and the terrain was very small, So,
I think very well, frankly.
Yeah, and all things considered, I think it did too, right? But it wasn't from tactics on my part. I want to stress it again. It was one of those games where if he had rolled a little hotter, the number would be 16-5, right? If he had rolled a little colder, the number would have been 14-7. I had no control over what was going to happen. He was going to remove the units he was going to remove. He killed Gallic in a turn. He killed Gallic and the Horde in one turn once I got close. Right? Those whizzes did work. And that's what, 40 nerve worth of stuff. So he did like 28 wounds on things that are defense 6 and 5 in one turn. It was great if it didn't happen to me. Right?
Yeah. The challenge for playing Jeff's list is deploying the war engines. You have to get good firing lanes. So you have to understand where to place them so that you will be shooting all 6 rounds. And for the opponent, if you can cleverly go around terrain that he couldn't see, and you can neuter some of that war engine shooting for a round or 2, that would really help. So that would have helped. And of course, if there was like a forest in the center of the map, then your forces being in it, the big rocks would be hitting on 6s, then they would deal much less damage. Because was it the big rocks that dealt the bulk of the damage?
It was the big rocks are putting on pressure, and the sharp stick throwers are putting on pressure. But the real problem was once I got close-ish, the wingets all fly over and go, hey, what's that? Right. And then the bangets all run over and go, hey, have some bangs. And the whizzes come over and they do some whizzes. And it was like, just pick all that crap up because everything is 17, 18-inch effective range. And then I'm like, okay, well, you're 12 inches away and I move 8. I'll get there in a minute. Oh, I'm dead. Right. That being said, I can't take Jeff's list and just get a win. Right. I couldn't sit down with that list and get wins the way that he does. I mean, that is a dude who knows what the army does, has refined it, and has stress tested it. Right.
Okay, let's move on to the third game. Round 3, Plunder. And this, you're versus Brian Smith. He's taking Northern Alliance. He has a horde, and this is before the 2023 update. So it's the Human Clansman horde with defense 5, 2 Ice-Skin Hunters troops. Ice-Skin Hunters are like the Glade Stalker equivalent with frozen arrows. Ice-Skin Hunters Regiment, Huskar Regiment with Elite, Snow Trolls Horde, Frostfang Cavalry Horde with Haste, Snow Foxes in a Swarm, it's a regiment, I guess, and Ice Queen with Icy Breath 10 and Blizzard 2. 2 Lords of Frostfangs, one with 9 attacks and one with 8 attack and Blade of Slashing. I guess he's 5 points short. And Hrim.
Right.
So it's a mixed arms list, but pretty elite because most of the units are pretty pricey. He's coming up to 12 units. 11 of them score, just minus the Ice Queen, and 22 unit strength. So you win this by a big margin, 18-3.
Yeah. So one, Ryan's army is gorgeous. He won Player's Choice at the event. It was amazing from the 3D print sculpts all the way through to his painting. It was and this was display. It was gorgeous, and he rules, right? So it was fantastic getting to play. I've never actually played him on the table before. So the way that we set up, I play against my buddy Corey Walliser, and he for a couple of years was running Varangur pretty heavy. So I have a pretty decent understanding of how to like kind of deal with this type of a list. So we're playing Plunder, if I remember correctly. Yes, and the Plunder. The 2 2-point tokens are on the right hand side, and the 3 1-point tokens are in the middle on the left hand side. So a lot of fighting is going to happen on the right? Which I was like, I'm happy with. I mean,
the Dwarves are happy with that. They're happy to stay together.
Right. But he's also happy with that because he can concentrate he only has 12 units. So he can put a lot of his units into a small area and make a mess. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I luckily went first. I run up with my King on Large Beast. I pick up one of the 2-point tokens, and I'm staring down essentially a horde. I'm looking at the Human Clansman horde, and I'm also looking at the Snow Trolls. Well, the Human Clansman horde is in the middle. He has Hrim looking at me, and he has the regiment of Huskarls. Yeah. So I'm like, oh man, well, I'm going to give up the king, and in exchange, you're going to come over here and you're going to have to kill him. So he moves up, and I'm actually looking at a picture of the game. So at one point, he had the chance or the opportunity to charge with Hrim, the Snow Trolls, and the Huskarls into the king. Mm-hmm. And he's doing the math, and he's like, do I put in Hrim? Do I do this? Do I do that? And he opted to put in the Snow Trolls and the Huskarls into the king and have Hrim come up behind and do Icy Breath on something, right? Mm-hmm. On the right-hand side, there's a hill, right? And the only thing that can see over that hill, I have King on Large Beast that can see over it, and he has his Frostfang Cavalry that can see me. But I had set my sharpshooters up over there, and I was just like, boom, 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 take a bunch of wounds. And so I ended up wavering them 3 times in a row, and he never got them into combat before I picked them up. Yay, it works, right?
Which unit is that again?
The Frostfang Cavalry horde.
Right. Yeah. Right? They're sad when they get wavered.
Yeah. Right. On the left-hand side, he has some foxes and some other, and some shooting, and a Lord on Frostfang. And so he's going to go over there and he's going to mess around and try to pick up some of the units. I have a token force over there to fight him. The real fight happens in the right-hand side. And essentially what happens is he charges in with both those units, the Huskarl regiment and the trolls. And he rolls like hot garbage. And he doesn't kill the king. Oh. Facing that scrum, I have the horde of the horde of Iron Guard with the defense with the hammer measure force. I have Gallic, and I have a regiment of Iron Guard. So I countercharge and proceed to murder everything in the center of the table. Right. He then has the option. He has Hrim and a couple other pieces that he's going to charge into countercharge. Right. His kids come over. I guess they went to the zoo. They come in the hall. They come over to watch the game. Now his dice were absolute garbage in round 2. He moves it with Hrim, picks up all his dice, proceeds to roll like, oh, I got 15 attacks. Oh, look, a 6 with Hrim. That's 18 attacks. Oh, 16 times. That's weird, huh? Boom! I'm going to wound you 14 times. Why don't you pick Gallic up? I'm like, I don't want to. Right. So he's like, he's like, kids, don't go anywhere, right? I'm like, seriously, don't go anywhere. Like, your dad had no luck until you showed up. Just stay here, right? And so it came down, even though it's 18-3, it went back and forth for the rest of the game. We were kind of scrumming back and forth. But at the end of the game, I had lost 700-800 points, almost 1,000 points of stuff. He had lost 1,700 points of crap. Because what happened was he ended up losing the units in the middle, right? And every time he loses a unit, it's 300 points, right? So I shut off the Frost Fang, put 300 points in my pocket, right? At the end of the game, he had the horde of human clansmen in the middle left, and I think I killed and Hrim, and I killed everything else, right? Just because of the way the rest of the game went. So even though he had like a burst of luck and he was able to pick up some tokens, I killed the things and I took the tokens back and, got a giant win. So
I do have a question. If you went first, you could have moved slightly less than 12 inches up, pick up the token, and most of his things couldn't charge you because anything speed 6 and below couldn't charge because you're just out of 12 inches.
Right. So I was able to move up to threat. Yeah, let me rephrase that. I moved up to threaten the token, and he moved up a little bit, and then and that allows me to do, if I charge forward with the king and pick it up, the other units can't reach to help. So I had to move them up, and then then I was able to lay the trap the way that I wanted. Right. So yeah, it was turn 2 when I charged forward and I picked it up. Right.
Okay. Right. So, all right.
Yep.
So move on quickly. That's the end of turn 1. So you have 2 wins and a loss.
Yeah, I'm feeling strong. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I was like, yeah, it's working, right? The list is working. Jeff O'Neill notwithstanding, I feel like I'm doing some good stuff, right? And then round 4, I wake up and I played Keith Monick and his shooty salamanders. He's also from
I'll just
Southeast.
quickly go through that list. 2 hordes of ceremonial guard with the effigy of fire. 1 has Helm of Confidence. That's because I think he only has 2 inspiring sources in his list. He has 4 regiments of Corsairs. So these are the guys with piercing 1, 18-inch range 4+ shooting.
Yep.
Okay, and you have 3 Commodons. So these are the long-range spitters. 2 Phoenixes and 1 Ancient Phoenix. Mage Priest with Fireball Tent and Veil of Darkness.
Yep.
And we have Firebrand, which is the pirate character, which has 12-inch pistols and duelist on his blades.
Yep.
Yeah, 12 units stat scores out of 14, and then 24 unit strength. So how did this game go?
So
it's invade. The scenario is invade.
It was invade, right? So dwarves don't like to see invade anyway. And this was another one of those, like, everything except for the 2 hordes of ceremonial guard shoot. So that was great. So the way the game was set up, there was a hill in the center of the table, just off center to the left, and there was a building a third of the way in on the left-hand side, on his side of the table. And so I set up, because as dwarves, you have to have a plan right in the beginning, right? And I was like, okay, we're playing invade. I set up 3 of my regiments, 2 of the Iron Guard and one of the bulwarkers on the left-hand side, along with the king with the extra unit strength. And I'm going to run up the left side of the table, because he had set all of his Corsairs in a block on the right side of the table. And I was like, well, I'm going to stay on this side of the hill. I'm going to run up over here and I'm going to snuggle behind this building and I'm going to hide for the rest of the game. And that gives me 11 unit strength on your side of the table. And I'm like, all I have to do is kill the 2 hordes of ceremonial guard and I'm going to win the game. Right? Because the Corsairs only have unit strength 2. Right? And so I'm like, all I got to do is kill a unit of Corsairs. I'll kill the 2 hordes. I'm in it. I can give up some unit strength and it's going to be all right. So I move up in the middle. I'm shooting stuff and I'm trying to do some stuff. I made a giant mistake in the beginning of the game. I had 15 shots plus from the sharpshooters. I shot 2 of them into 1 unit of Corsairs, and I put like 7 wounds or 8 wounds on one of the units. It was 8 wounds. And I think they're only 13, 15 as well. And I was like, I'll take these other 5 shots and I'll shoot over at this other unit. What a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
So, right. So
he has you.
No shit. So I don't waver anything. I don't do it. Whatever. Right. So he comes over. He's like, well, radiance of life and a little healing. And look, there's no wounds anywhere. I'm like, oh, so that was my one chance to do something cool. Right. What a bunch of crap. So the way the game worked, because of my own stupidity, he ended up moving up in the center and just shooting everything. And apparently Commandants never miss. And he just killed all the stuff on the right-hand side. So he killed, like, it was another one of those games where, like, I had the horde moving up the middle. My horde punches his horde in the face, and after 2 rounds, kills it in the middle. He has a horde on the left-hand side backed up by a phoenix. I run everything up. My king on large beast with the extra unit strength actually charges that horde on the left to pin it while the rest of the units come up. When you know, he countercharges the king. He does a bunch of wounds and he spikes the nerve roll 10, 11, pick the king up. Well, I'm like, all right. So I go in, I remove his horde, but now I only have 9 unit strength on that side of the table, and he's got 11.
Right.
Right. And he ended up with all that shooting. He takes my Gallic and he picks it up. I mean, fresh, kills it in 1 turn. I'm like, well, that was the toughest piece in the entire list. I'll just pick that up. Right. The Phoenixes all come over and have a meeting, and they decide to just burn down the horde, and they do. So like, I lost that game big. And that was, as opposed to Jeff, where I was like, I don't know what to do. This one, I was like, I got a plan. I'm going to do the plan. Here we go. Execute it like an idiot. But like a couple small, errors. But once again, the dwarf list doesn't project enough threat. So once I'm where I'm going to die, I can't charge anything. I can't do anything. I just stand there and hope that like there's no turn 7,
Right.
And there was. So, it is what it is. But
right.
Yep.
It's interesting. Shooting salamanders list. You don't see that every day.
No, super cool, right? A super cool list. And then I played Kevin Jury
round 5, dominate.
Yeah.
He's running very killy. Grogger regiments. 2 Reaver troops with skirmisher boots and ram. The mask, I forgot what the mask give them. I think it's life leech or something. But they're berserker type units, so they have lots of attacks for being troops. So
20 attacks.
2 Huskars regiments, 2 mounted sons. One with Brand of the Warrior and J boots. I think Warrior gives them brutal, and one with Guise of the Deceiver, giving them stealthy and haste, and a brew of haste. All right, and then 2 Tundra Wolves troops for Chaff. 1 Lord, he has Snow Fox, Devoted Icon, and Wings of Honey Maze, and McNeiled, and 2 Lords on Frostfangs with Snow Foxes. 13 units, 11 of them score 20 unit strength. It's a very elite list. So and it's dominate, right? So everything has to go into the middle.
Right. I was licking my lips on this. I made such a giant hash of this game. So I know how to fight this. I know how to beat this. We both actually had just taken giant losses. And I think he had been shot off the table too by somebody else. And he was like, are we going to fight? I said, dude, we're going to fight. He's like, yes, we're going to fight. So we had this like little huggy moment. It was pretty great. And then, and so we fought, right? So it gets to be like, he pushes a bunch of crap into the middle. I kind of come up a little bit to stop him. I'm shooting like his Reavers, and they're dash 15 or something. And so they're hard to kill. And then I ended up releasing all the dogs, and I killed one of the Huskarl regiments out from under him. And he's looking down and he's like, I don't know how I'm gonna, like, he's counting up the unit strength and he's like, wow, I'm way behind now. I go, yeah, you're kind of way behind. Right. And I'm still putting pressure and I'm shooting stuff. Turns out he had moved in a bunch of units in the middle. I moved up to fight. And at one point I had the option but his kings on his lords on Frostfang and Magnild are like in spots where they can sneak between crap because they're nimble and fight my second line of stuff in the back, right? That's actually doing the work now, So he ends up getting the Frostfang Lord and Magnild and the Lord with the Devoted Icon and Wings all into the Horde, and he punks the Horde out from under me. Just boom, take a bunch of wounds, pick it up. I'm like, oh, son of a gun. And then I panic and I send instead of turning Gallic to shoot at something and just not commit him to anything, I push him into the middle. I have him fight the other unit of Housecarls, and I end up losing Gallic because he's pinned in place now. There's nowhere for he to back up and move to other spots. So he's there. Magnild comes in, the other, Lord, he ends up killing that too. I'm losing unit strength in the middle like this. And you know what? Once the grind starts, I don't grind well without those pieces, because my stuff has 12 attacks. I do eight hits and I'll wound you twice. That's what everything in the army does, 2 wounds. Right. And so even if I get flank charges, it'll do 4. It doesn't do enough. Right. So I end up losing that game by about 1 unit strength. I lost on 1 unit strength in the middle. I was like, man, I let that one get away. That should have been a win. But Kevin played it really smart. He played it very well. Played it very well. Yep.
Dwarves, I guess, especially your list, it's about how much damage you deal with the Mastiffs and the sharpshooters before the lines hit. And once it hits, he hits harder, right? So
yeah.
All right. Last round against the infamous Cowpool with his melee goblins. This is Salt the Earth. He has 4 rebel regiments, 4 hordes of rebel, 3 trombones, mop-up launcher, 2 blasters, 3 mincers, 3 wingets, Groany Snark, Bang It with Inspiring, Magua and Juice, and King on Chariot with the Orb of Towering Presence as well. 14 units, 24 units, 17 of its score at 30 unit strength. But you did defeat him 19-2. So tell me how it went down.
Yeah, so I think that Kyle made a mistake. So on the right, in his deployment, he had on the right-hand side, he actually put near the board edge on the right-hand side, he had set up like a pair of mincers and a blaster and Groany and Magua and Juice. And so a lot of stuff that could cause me real problems if it was in the middle and was able to go and then fan out. He kind of pinned himself to the table edge on the right hand side because there was a raise token or a token for him to come over and grab and put pressure on me, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the middle, he had all 3 of the war trombones. He had and just rabble regiments with rabble hordes, and just he's owning the middle of the table he's blanketing it with goblins. But there was a wood in the middle of the table, right? And so he's able to move up, and I can't shoot him, but he can't really see me, right? And I'm like, I have no problem with the standoff because what's your horde of, your rabble horde going to do, right? He did move his war trombones up. He started attacking stuff with the war trombones, but once I could see them, the King on Large Beast, Faber Ironheart, I just pushed a bunch of stuff and I picked those pieces up and then turned to the middle. And at that point, I'm next to his hordes on the flank. He had to back up. He had to turn. It was a mess. The fireball guy, my flame priest, killed Groany Snark in 2 turns, picked up a wingate, killed him, killed a blaster. I mean, he had the best game ever, to be honest. My dice got hot and he just gave me all these targets and I was able to pick up a lot of his stuff, which was good. Kyle's fantastic. I've never played him before either. So it was cool to play Jeff, who I've never played, Kyle, who I've never played, Ryan, who I've never played. It was a great Masters for that. Right. And about 2/3 of the way through the game, he's like, oh yeah, nothing's going right. Well, all right, Rossi, right. Looks like we're just going to play this out.
I guess he didn't put enough firepower in the middle. So once you start punching through, that's where everything starts to crumble.
That's it. I mean, he put a bunch of regiments and hordes in the middle. He put a bunch of unit strength in the center, but he didn't have anything to really back it up, right? I wasn't really scared of it. Yeah, Now, if any of those had been like Luggets on a countercharge, he would have made me very sad, right? There were a couple times when I killed a horde. There's another horde looking at me. I'm like, who cares? I'm half in the woods. You'll be hindered. But if it was something real, I would have been the countercharge would have been tough for me to deal with,
right?
So,
all right, that's your illustrious run, and we will review your score at the end of the 3 guys recap.
Sure.
So, thank you, Mike, for regaling us with your games.
I'm sorry, that was
Next
forever.
We have
to talk forever.
we have Keith with his elves list. So it's a shooting and alpha strike list. Keith, would you like to read off your list for us?
Yeah, sure. So 2 Gladestalker regiments, which come standard, 2 Silver Breeze cavalry regiments, Stormwind cavalry regiment with Quicksilver Lancers and the Orb of Towering Presence, 2 Dracon hordes, 1 with J-Boots, 1 with Pipes of Terror, Elven Archmage, mounted, Boots Levitation, AC4, Argus Rodnar, and then the formation, just naked. So 12 units, 10 scoring, 25 unit strength.
Yeah, so the one thing I'd say is, I guess for most people, they'll be deciding between 1 or 2 hordes of Dracon Riders, but I guess you have been sticking with 2 hordes all the time. So that is on and you still have Quicksilver Lancers, so that to do that, you sacrifice a little bit of shooting over there. So what are your considerations? building this list and going into Masters?
Well, I didn't see push as a potential scenario, and that meant I didn't have to have a push token holder
Area.
which can be annoying. So I decided I wanted to maximize counterpunch. The mirror match is always difficult against elves. It typically comes down to shoots more. But if you are fast enough, you can sort of put pressure on an elven player, as you well know. As an elven players know, like once they get pressure on them, it gets tough. And I figured having lots of very maneuverable unit strength would help with the unit strength scenarios. You know, it's still only 12 units with 10 scoring units, which can get, you know, as we're talking about my games, I hold on with my fingernails like constantly. But it gives me a lot of options. I typically have initiative and in control to where I want to go. It has, you know, 56 shots, so I didn't sacrifice that much shooting. There's still a lot of shooting in there. And then Argus sort of is an extra attack one every turn, so he can really tip the scales. And he also basically means the whole army is inspired as needed. So that's always good.
Do you always use Argus's reroll on Alchemist Curse?
Sometimes, I mean, early, yes. Late, you know, an extra wound with a Dracon Horde can
Right, in melee. Yeah.
13 wounds versus 14 wounds or something like that. You can really increase your odds of breaking a unit.
Right.
This is a very well balanced list.
Yep.
It's got some good shooting. It's got some good punching. It's not, you know, what we don't like to play against, which is the, you know, 4 Glade Stalker unit. It's actually a well balanced list. I really like it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'll still say it's pretty skewed because other than Marcelo, who is also speed 10, other lists will get shot first and then they'll get charged at first because you get shot by the shooting and then the Dracons will go in first. And
it has 0 staying power.
Yeah.
Which is
very elven.
Oh yeah.
All right. So let's move into your games.
It's only 3 hammers though. It's only
the 3
real
hammers. The 3 hammers is
the Dracon Rider regiments have nimble, so they are able to get flanks very easily because they can fly 20 and turn. So once you charge in the flank, you hit as hard as a horde.
For sure.
Yeah, so
but having 3 things that can go straight front.
That's the tricky part, and that's the gravy on the elves list right now. This formation is really juicy.
Yeah,
it gives you a lot more threat. Yeah. All right, so your first game on stream versus Eric Trowbridge in Rays, and Eric Trowbridge is running a dwarfs list, and it's 4 Iron Guard regiments with Mastiffs, that's the defense 6 unit, 2 Berserker troops, 1 Shield Breakers Horde with Elite, 2 Brock Rider troops, 2 Flame Belchers, Gorlock's Fury, and 2 Dwarf Lords on Large Beasts, 14 unit, 12 of them score, and 27 unit strength. So how did this game go?
I was mostly in control this entire game, but obviously if I don't kill stuff fast enough, I'm not going to win. So if you look, kind of see his box of death there on the screen, everything with defense 6 and his 2 flame belchers were on his right flank, my left flank. And he outplaced tokens on me. So all 4 tokens were on that side of the board, which was bad. He's on the top. So everything is to the right. And then on his left and my right, he put all of his defense 4 units, except for 1 Berserker regiment, sort of using that building for cover, and his 2 Kings on Large Beasts. And so he had a token, you can kind of see it next to the hill on my side, and then my token was behind the building. So the way it worked out is his middle was empty. And when I started realizing his middle was empty, I realized I could just split the board on him. He went first, moved his Lords on Large Beast up really aggressively, sucked. And it meant that my Dracon Lord had to go in early and stop them because I didn't want them charging Gladestalkers. And then Gladestalkers and a Silver Breeze regiment were shooting around the house at his defense 4 units. And over 4 or 5 turns, they were able, I think it was 5 turns, they were able to kill all defense 4. And the Dracon Lord managed to hold off 2 Kings on Large Beasts because I went, he survived 3 rounds of combat.
Wow.
Because he gave me a Snake Eyes on the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Held up both those both those Kings on Large Beasts and allowed the Curse Mage to just murderize them over a couple turns.
How did one unit hold two units?
So he was stuck with the building.
Right.
So I went 50 into 1, and he got a flank charge 2 turns on my Dracon Lord, and he still lived. But as Mike said, once you poke that guy in the front, he did 1 wound back. So then I had a flank with the other one, and he maybe did 6 or 7 wounds. So it was an 8 twice, and I survived the first round. And then the next round he did 6 or 7 wounds, and he got Snake Eyes.
Right. He killed you on the third round. Right.
Right. And he couldn't bring his troops of Berserkers in because it wasn't space.
Yeah. If you're next to the building, yeah.
Yeah. So I split his middle, and I sent, if you see, 1 regiment. I had 1 regiment of Dracon Riders on the left, Silver Breeze regiment, and a Dracon Horde on the left, sort of just manage him. I was going to give him his tokens and let him take him and just not get dogged off the table. Silver Breeze regiment got dogged off the table. The other Dracon Horde sort of inched into the woods, and there was 1 turn where he could have theoretically wavered them. But because he didn't, he claimed both of his tokens on the left. I claimed him on the right, and I kept him off the one on the right. So if I could capture the middle and capture 1 of the tokens that 2/3 of his army was sitting on, was sort of right underneath that Flame Belcher next to his Horde, which was sort of, the Horde was blocking line of sight of my Dracons because they were sitting on a hill. He was giving me his flank, but I didn't want anything to do with shield breakers. And it was already pretty late, and I knew if I didn't break him in one go, that I wasn't going to have anything over there to catch tokens. So I was able to sacrifice on turn 6 a regiment of Dracons and a horde of Dracons, because I charged a horde of Dracons into the Flame Belcher, and I flew a regiment of Dracons, which had, with both regiments of Dracons, ended up killing his back unit of Berserkers, because I let them get a charge on me, hindered on 1, and then I was able to get a flank and a
So
front.
you're surrounding him, right? So he's getting dizzy.
Totally surrounding him. And then I flew a Dracon regiment over Gallo, and he was like, "Yo, you can't see. You can't charge." I'm not charging. I'm flying a Dracon regiment over Gallo, presenting Gallo my rear, getting 5 unit strength on this token to your 4, totally understanding that that's 500 points. It's just going to fly off the table. So I did that turn 5, and then turn 6, I had my unit strength 4 knights in the center, and he had 1 Iron Guard unit looking at the unit strength 4 knights, and he had another Iron Guard unit that maybe could have gotten there on turn 6, but I had a Silver Breeze regiment, so 7 probably would have been a tie. So it was, skin on my teeth the entire time. Raised, typically you're playing dwarves and like, okay, I can handle this, but him going first helped, and then he's just so tough, and I had no intention of charging anything defense 6.
Right.
So I just stuck the game plan, shot his defense 4 as best I could, and played for the small win.
Yeah, so it ended 13-8. So he burned 2 of the tokens on the same side. You burned 1 on each side and held the center, right? That's what
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So that game is on stream. So if you'd like to watch it blow by blow, you can watch it on Matt Comics stream. Next.
They bounce around a lot on the stream, and they don't really catch a lot of the big moments, but
agreed.
Yeah. So round 2, control. And this is versus Michael Sigler's Abyssals. I guess you are very happy to see this list. I will read it off.
However, I'll explain.
Right. Abyssal Ghouls Regiment, 2 Gargoyles Troops, 2 Morlock Hordes with the Despoilers, with 1 with J-Boots, Abyssal Horseman Regiment with Blade of Slashing, 2 Tortured Soul Regiments, 1 Cronius, 1 Seductress with Gnome Glass Shield and Host Shadow Beast 2, Zazuzu, Manifestation of Bale, and Well of Souls. So he does have Well of Souls and Cronius, but only 1 Cronius. The hammers are either defense 4 and Morlocks, or Abyssal Horseman has only 14-16 nerf. So tell me about this matchup.
So he set up sort of on the left, on his left flank, 2/3 of the table. He had he was anchoring his right with his abyssal ghouls, which I was like, okay. So I had a little bit of shooting on my right flank to shoot at stuff coming over. And I had a lot of fast stuff on the left, so I could basically turn the game into an L, which was super successful. Was controlling that flank for most of the game. The Seductress punched a regiment of Dracons for a couple turns, but I eventually battered through it. So on the right, he was sort of staring at all my shooting, saying, I have to come at you or I'm effed, which is the correct move with all this defense for. Came at me pretty hard. I was able to hop my Dracon Lord over his army because he kind of misplayed that, which forced Bale to turn around and just get in the way. And, you know, but then I was just annoying him from behind with that rampage item on that unit. Makes a lot of what he has. If you get a flank or rear, that Dracon Lord becomes very dangerous. He was pushing pretty hard, chewed through some Gladestalkers. He missed a nimble charge. I was able to get a nimble charge with my Dracon, or with my Lancers through a woods into a Moloch horde. And so they went in.
So did you do a corkscrew charge?
No, because I wasn't engaged in combat. I just did a nimble charge. Found a unit that was in the way. They went in, a Gladestalker regiment went in, and I think the Dracon Lord went in the rear, which was enough to sort of pop the center of his battle line. And then everybody sort of turned and looked everywhere. He unfortunately came in after that, and I think he one-shot my Stormwind with his Horseman, which is not unheard of, but it was a solid. It was like a 8 twice, 7 twice, something like that. Blew right through him, which caused me a lot of problems. So I had to leave my Dracon Lord to stop them. Everything was sort of collapsing on the middle. I was struggling. I mean, he was killing units, taking out my Dracon hordes, I was clawing for unit strength. But then I had a regiment charge the Abyssal Horsemen. I had 2 wounds on them. I did 5 wounds on the charge, and then I dropped to 10. And they were on. I was just sitting over there to hold them up. But once I dropped to 10, and they could turn around and flatten the rear of the rest of his army, because we had sort of started fighting east to west instead of north to south. And then everything sort of fell apart for him really quickly. So I was struggling and sweating for 3 or 4 turns, and then I had a couple good nerve rolls. And much like elves, abyssals can sort of fall apart quickly, and then they did. And I don't remember I think he might have had. I think I might have tabled him. But obviously he killed a crap ton of me too.
Right. You said earlier on do you kill the abyssal ghouls and then swung inwards from there?
I kind of swung around them and just shot those guys off the table over 2 or 3 turns. Right. They had some cover, and I wasn't going to engage.
Did you shoot off any of the hammer units?
I think I shot off the Tortured Souls, both units. I don't think I shot off either Moloch or I think I just like one-shot Molochs a couple times.
Right.
Either with Dracons or because they're defense 4, right? So 16, 18 short.
So you're wounding on 2s.
Wounding on 2s, do 12, 13 wounds, throw in the Argus if you need it. So
right.
And then the AC Mage was doing AC Mage stuff and just adding wounds places and being annoying.
Yeah. All right. So round 3.
This is a game I did not deserve to win.
Against Mike Grant. I'll just read off his list. He's playing Herd, Hunters of the Wild troop with Stingstone, 2 Harpies troops, Guardian Brutes Horde with Brew of Sharpness, Lycan Horde with Brew of Strength, 4 Forest Shambler regiments, 1 Brave Riders Horde, a Great Chieftain with a Horn of the Great Migration and Sacred Horn that gives them Wild Charge 1, and 3 Herder and Avatar of the Father. Is the 3 Herder a Wild Father?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so it's a Wild Father. All right. 13 unit, 12 of them score, 23 unit strength. And you won this 13-8, so small win. Tell us what happened.
So I deployed about 2/3 of my army all on the starting line before looking down at his army and seeing he had the Great Migration. And I said, oh crap. I moved my Gladestalkers back, but I still had Silver Breeze sort of hung out to dry. I rolled a 2 to go first, and he rolled a 1, which allowed me to redeploy, and which I'm thankfully good at. So I was able to sort of create the U to fight, but we're also playing Plunder, so he was going to rock up and take as many tokens as he wanted. He played a really cagey game. That Great Chieftain with the Sacred Horn can just shoot that Wild Charge thing out anywhere he wants it. It was constantly giving me fits. My numbers weren't working, and like I wasn't after I was scrambling from jump, so I was always maybe adding it, maybe not adding it. He could move it so far, it was trouble. But my shooting was pretty effective against Forest Shamblers. He was able, like, I just made some horrible mistake. He was able to charge a Dracon horde with the Willfather and a Forest Shambler regiment in the flank, because I just brain farted, killed them. But on that flank, like, a regiment of Dracons went into the Avatar of the Father and did 8 wounds. It's like, okay. And then the AC Mage went over and finished off the Avatar of the Father, and then turned around and over 2 turns obliterated Willfather, because she just decided that Willfather needed to die. He had a big chunk of unit strength holding 4 tokens, or 2 of the 2.
The 2
tokens. He turned at one point with the back line, because I was sort of threatening something and he was going to get more stuff. That allowed me to run in and kill a Forest Shambler unit, and then charge into his great Guardian Brutes holding the tokens. Killed it, needed an overrun of 3 on 6 to pick him up. Rolled a 2. We went to 7. I was able to get the overrun. In the middle of all this, his Centaur Brave Strider Horde charged 17, because again, I can't do math, into a Silver Breeze regiment. And they had maybe 8 wounds on them. No, what was it? It doesn't matter. Yeah, 8 wounds on them.
They did die.
They blew up. My, well, I mean, his Centaur Horde had 8 wounds. My Silver Breeze blew up. I countercharged just to stop them with Gladestalkers. Did 4 wounds to him and rolled a boxcar, and just like one shot that Brave Strider Horde. And again, they could have blown through and threatened my guys holding the tokens. And so everything I needed to work for the last 3 turns worked. Mike played an amazing game. I shouldn't have been in this game, but tried to keep it together as best I could. Mike, if he had gone first, I might have been tabled.
Yeah, I think you made a few mistakes, which made you feel bad.
So many mistakes.
That you might not have deserved the win, but just on paper wise, your list should be able to come out on top of his list. So that the list construction already gave you a huge advantage over there.
Yeah, that's like what I saw, and I got lazy, and it had been a long day, and I didn't, well, I'm thinking elves, it's fine. I didn't even look at his list closely before the tournament. He obviously designed his list to catch people napping, and I was asleep. And it
was the 3rd game of the first day.
Yeah, it could have gone really poorly, but
did the Great Chieftain have Wings of Honey Maze, or he's just running 12 and spreading?
He's just running, right? So it's 21-inch potential, and like it's hard to sort of keep that. And a lot of his army was kind of close. I don't think his Lycan hordes didn't even do anything. They just sort of threatened stuff throughout the game. They didn't charge. He was a very, very cagey player.
Right. All right. So end of round 1, you had 3 wins. How are you feeling at the end of day 1?
I feel like I was just holding on, because even game 2, when I got that big win, I felt like in the middle that I was in a lot of trouble. So I was pretty whipped, but I was happy with where I was considering how things were going. Once I figured out who was playing round 4, I was a little.
Yeah, I think that's
not good, but
that's the thing with elves, right? Against the newer player, you will just roll over them, but against experienced players at Masters, elves are still gonna do elves, but the players are not just gonna roll over, just turn around and let you smash them. So you will lose a lot of units, and because elves do have very little units, it just makes you sweat all the time.
Yeah, I think Blackjack lends itself to having more scoring units than fewer. And yes, I had 25 unit strength, but I only had 10 scoring units. So I can kill pretty well. I can win a scenario, but I don't always win it.
You don't win big.
Against experienced players, I don't crush people.
Yep, and round 4, Jeff Shilkin, the best Ogres player at Masters. And he went on to beat Jeff Radigan, if I'm not wrong.
He had already beaten Jeff Radigan. He had played Jeff Radigan and Dustin before he played me. So he had a pretty rough road.
All right, let's talk about his list. I think it's pretty standard. 3 warrior regiments, 1 warrior horde, 3 siege breakers hordes, 1 boomer chariot troop with sacred horn to spread the stealthy bubble, 3 sergeants with heavy crossbows, 3 warlocks with one of them has Drain Knife, and then Norma Garok to be that 4th warlock. So his list is pretty shooty as well, with 15 units. All of them score 26 units strength. So did the stealthy bubble give you problems?
So I thought about this overnight, which is probably the only reason I came up with a tactic to give myself a chance. And I realized that I'm just not going to fight him in Invade, because I had a list of the remaining games, and I felt Invade's probably one of the few that I might be able to win. Maybe if we play Loot, I can run up and get first turn and run away. But Invade, if I can just sort of avoid him and get around him, I have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So to do that, I set up early my Gladestalkers left,
mm-hmm.
and he sort of responded some regiments and some Siegebreakers back. He didn't put them on the 12-inch line, they were back a little bit. And he had his Stealthy Bubble over there, which I felt like probably meant the
bulk of his stuff are going down there.
And the Warlocks were going to go over there too. So I put enough stuff out. I usually put regiments on both sides. That was another placement. I put Argus over with the Gladestalkers. I put enough stuff out that he started committing to that one side, and I put everything else on my army on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So he sort of deployed in 2/3, and his sergeants were in the middle, but his Warlocks were more left. So the game went the way I wanted it to go. I moved a boatload of unit strength across the board on the right. My Dracon regiment on the left was able to hop over and just go run away. He shot my Gladestalkers off. He kind of pushed across. I had a big hunk of guys on the far right, just hiding behind a hill, trying not to die from some sergeant shooting. His sergeant shooting was low, and my shooting back at the sergeants was better. So I knocked them out. I was able to cut through the middle of his lines with the AC Mage, who then turned with Argus's help and just obliterated Namagrok off the table. There was a solid re-rolled nerve to do it, but that was helpful. So, even with all that, he was able to shoot off a regiment of Dracons. So I had to send a Dracon horde back across the middle to kill a regiment of his, and then inch to the right 2 inches to get back onto his side. And to tie, I do that on 6, don't inch any further, but I get a 7. And then we just stare at each other, and then I scoot across and we 10-10 tie. So, it was the classic, just move around. So
the bulk of your forces avoided each other.
100%. And if I had some luck on the left with the Gladestalker regiment, did 3 rounds against the Siegebreaker horde in shooting, and then 4 rounds in combat and wavered it. And then I did another one the next round and wavered it again. So I slowed him down, but I wouldn't do anything. That was just useless. And then I think he had 7s twice on that Dracon regiment. If he doesn't kill that Dracon regiment, I could have just hid. But I got some crazy solid nerve roll, so I wasn't complaining about pulling that draw, because this list is designed to just murderize elves, because we're not going in, and he shoots better than I do. So
was he screening with the warrior regiments?
Not really. He's not worried about me front charging
the Siegebreakers, right?
Siegebreakers, yes. Whatever. And then he's not even worried about me shooting at him, because he's got enough plinky
stealthy and defense 6.
I'm not going to do it. So I didn't do it. I shot at sergeants and some warlocks, and
even with their stealthy, the nerve is low enough to bring it down.
Yeah, I charged once with Gladestalker. Yeah, I charged once with Glade. Well, Namagrok is defense 5, but I charged once with Gladestalkers and once with a Dracon horde, and otherwise I did no charges.
Right.
So the game was pretty nutty.
Right. Okay. So next, Dominate against Dustin Howard. This is an interesting one. So Dustin Howard, pretty famous player as well. He's rocking Empire of Dust, 2 Skeleton Spearman regiments, 2 Mummy's troops, 2 Skeleton Warriors troops, 3 Enslaved Guardian hordes. Okay, 2 Tortured Souls. Something went wrong there. Okay, I'll check the list while I just read off the rest.
So
Soul Snare, Undead Worm, Monolith, Ammonite Pharaoh, with level 2 spellcaster, Surge 8 and Hold Shadow Beast 3. Sabrak Ray, the Accursed, and Idol of Shobik, 15 units, 12 of them score, 22 unit strength.
So I think he only had 18 unit strength, and because he didn't have 2 Sorcerer Souls regiments. Because
I'll pull up his
heavily
list as we speak, just to confirm everything.
Heavily out unit strength him, which was shocking.
I wouldn't get the unit strength wrong because I would have read off I would just copied off the list. So 2 spearmen, 2 mummies, 2 warriors, troops. Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
3 enslaved guardians, soul snare, undead.
You're right. Yeah, he's 22.
15, 22. Yep. So everything is correct except the tortured souls aren't supposed to be there.
Fair enough. He even said, so there was a hill in the dominate area. So he kind of,
hide behind
his right flank. He hid behind the hill to my right flank. I sort of set up, be able to shoot him. He knew what I was going to do, which was shoot him until I had to jump in, and I knew what he was going to do, which was kind of press on me with some stuff. He is Dustin, so he led with Shobik. And one turn I got him up to 11 wounds with shooting, and then he got him down to 0 the next turn, which sucked.
How did that happen? Shobik?
Soul Snare, heal, Iron Resolve.
Right.
So he healed himself, he Iron Resolved. It was painful. But, after that big swing, because Shobik sort of moved into the center to threaten me, and I was sort of moving back. After that big swing, I just started. The AC Mage sacrificed themselves to go help kill an enslaved Guardian horde, so he went down to 19 unit strength to my 25. Everything I had was in range to just jump into the middle. He took a big swing on a really long surge with Shobik. I can't remember what he needed, but he had 3 surge sources. But the problem was the monolith surged too well, and it got him out of range of
one of the surge casters. Oh dear.
But then he still only missed it by 1, but that 1 gave me a flank with my Dracons
and Shobik went down.
So I popped that, and then late game, once Shobik was out of the way, that was turn 3 or 4, my shooting was very consistent. Took the undead worm off in 1 turn because that thing couldn't hide behind anything. Started picking up like skeleton border troops and spearman regiments, and then sort of just packed in the middle. But he killed a decent amount of me, or I should say, I didn't kill a ton of him, and I just sort of packed in the middle.
Yeah, because you don't want to grind, right? You want to do as much.
I want to know how to do
right.
it. Yeah.
And if he plays the big target of Shobik and everything is just shuffling up behind, you already have that big Shobik threat to worry about. Yeah. But while not getting that surge is painful for sure.
But because he knew if he didn't go in, I just would have stared at him until the last turn and run in. So.
Right. All right, then that's a 14-7 victory to you. And last round, Salt the Earth. You are against Sean Troy, rocking Ratkin, 2 Warriors Hordes, 2 Shock Troops Hordes with Plague Pots. One has Brawl Strength, the other one has J-Boots. 2 Claw Shots Troops, 1 Tunnel Runners Regiment with Sharpness, 3 Weapon Teams, Tangle, Warlock with Hunt 3 and the default Lightning Bolt 5, Brood Enforcer with Trickster's Wand, 2 Brood Mother, 1 has both Drain Life and the shooting attack, 1 only has the shooting attack, and Mother Kryzar, which has the Cloak of Death and Lightning Bolt 5. He has 16 units, 12 of them score 23 unit strength. So this was a losing tie to you. You lost 9-11. It is a tie, just with a bit of attrition difference. So how did this game go, Salt the Earth?
I mean, I haven't played Reckon a ton. I've played it differently if I had played them more, but my general thought about Reckon is you just peel the onion, shoot the stuff that needs to be shot. So, I ran up with the regiment of, I got to go first, ran up with the regiment of Silver Breeze, blew up a token on the right, sort of had the rest of that flank anchored on a building. I shot a lot. He shot back. Late game, I was trying to strategically blow stuff up. But the problem is I only have 10 scoring units, so I can't just send things out to die. I had blown up a couple things. He was sitting on things with hordes. We were sort of just shooting back and forth. He was in cover. I was in cover. His brood mothers can really just wreck Gladestalkers sort of at whim. There was one turn where I had
with that 4+ shooting?
Yeah. Even if it hit on, or lightning bolt and 4+ shooting, and, It was the Warlock and 2 Broodmothers were just ripping through,
right.
or doing a lot of damage to my Glade Stalkers, even though they were in cover. Late game, there was one turn where they had like 8, 9 wounds on them, and he shot at them with a lot of stuff and didn't do any wounds. So I was like, because he had moved a Broodmother in to blow up the token they were on, which was awesome. So the token stayed, and that allowed me to send over the cavalry to attack his Warlock. But then I snaked his Warlock, which gave him so if I hadn't snaked his Warlock, I would have turned the Knights to cover the injured Glade Stalkers from any shooting. But I did snake them, and so the Knights couldn't turn. So he was able to shoot both of those units off the table. So I couldn't score that token, which would have been the win. And I had to sacrifice a Dracon regiment or a horde to fly over and blow up the token, which then got recharged. So I had to like give up a lot to, again, stay in the game. But it was, I think Sean played an excellent game. He really controlled my AC Mage, which was annoying with his Trickster's Wand dude. And, I don't want to blame it on snakes because I could have done other things differently, but I didn't lose not because I rolled a snake eye, but I did not lose because I didn't roll, whatever. You get what I'm saying. But Sean played a great game, and it was very tactical and just sort of nobody wanted to go in, so nobody did.
Right. So yeah, being an elite list, each snake eyes hurt even more, right? Because you just have that so few of units. Yeah, so that's the end of your round 6. Just let me check my slides before we carry on. So how do you feel after the 6 games?
Felt pretty good. I mean, it was in all 6 games. I didn't lose any of my 6 games, which is a nice thing to say.
Yeah, what is the record? 4 wins and 2 draws?
And 2, yeah. And then I was just like a couple nerve rolls. First of all, I didn't deserve all my wins, so I'm not going to claim I deserve all my wins. But even on the draws, I was a couple nerve rolls from pulling them out. But same token, I wasn't crushing people because I was just with blackjack. I was just hanging on. So I think that's what you run into nowadays. I mean, back in the day when you had hordes of archers, they stuck around a lot easier. You had kind of bigger blocks, and I think now elves are really. I know people play what are they called? Sea Guard hordes, but even their defense 4. So it's just a lot of pieces your opponents can exploit if they know what they're doing and they're not reacting to you the way you want them to. And there's 8 elves in the tournament, so it's just much like dwarves. Like, people go in with a plan and they executed it really well. And I just have to play what they expect me to play better. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't, and sometimes it didn't matter, and I just rolled really well.
Yeah. Well, it does help if you roll first. That's the thing about Alpha Strike and shooting, right?
Sure.
You get to roll your damage dice and your nerf dice first.
I do damage all 6 turns, and that's tough.
All right. So with that, let's move on to Marcelo. You're rocking Order of the Green Lady, one of my favorite armies. So I'm also very interested to know about how you played and how you performed. 3 of your games were incidentally streamed on the Masters coverage. So half of your games were on there. Half the Master streams were you. So
it's because you kept winning.
Yeah. So Order of the Green Lady, 2 Naiad Heart Piercers regiments, 2 Order of Redemption. Those are your super strong knights, Grail Knights, if they were in Bretonia. 1 with Sharpness and 1 with Elite, so they're hitting really hard. 3 Order of Forsaken Hordes, 1 with J-Boots, the other one with Healing Brew, and 3 Pegasus, 1 Avatar of the Green Lady, 2 Unicorns with Lightning Bolt 5, 1 had Blade of Slashing, and 1 had Mace of Crushing. Total of 13 units, but only 10 of them score. And even with 10 of them scoring, 3 of them are Pegasus, which sometimes you use them to score, sometimes you have to throw them away to chef them up, right? Total of 22 unit strengths. So what are your considerations when you build this list?
So I like a mobile list. I like an alpha strike that's going to be taking advantage of flank. And I think that, I'm not the only fast list out there. So I think that I want to control where I'm fighting. So I like having as many chaff as I do hammers. So the way you look at this list is it's got a little bit of shooting with some lightning ball and some Naya heart pieces. It's got 5 hammers and 5 chaff. And essentially the plan here is to control where you fight by chaffing up enemy units and double charging into what you want to fight.
Yeah, you're
And
considering
then by the time
you're considering the unicorn as chaff as well, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So the unicorns, and this is something that Jeff Trace taught me, is that the unicorns really do play 2 roles. They might be lightning bolting in the first couple of turns, but then they become chaff units. And it's important that when you use them as chaff, that they actually do 1 wound, and that's why they have slashing and crashing to make sure they do 1 wound, and that they still don't always do that one, and things go pear-shaped.
Yeah.
But if you're able to double charge enemy hammers and chaff up the things that can countercharge you back, then it means that by the time your chaff dies, your hammers are then cleared out whatever you chose first, and then can go after whatever just killed your chaff.
Yeah. Yeah, the unicorn with slashing is something I run as well. Green Lady, Pegasus.
And the Green Lady does 20 to 30 wounds a game.
Healing, right?
No, she does 20 to 30 wounds a game with the Cloak of Death.
All right, wow.
And then, combining the Green Lady with the Order of Redemption,
regeneration,
healing their wounds, regeneration, makes those units stick around when they really shouldn't. So they grind really well.
What I'm most interested in the Naiad is in the Naiad heart piercers, because they do get out-threatened by 24-inch bowls, which is very prevalent right now. Do you find that a problem?
Yes. So they were the underperformance of the list. I like having something that can carry tokens and still do something in the game. So I do like having shooting units, so that whether they're carrying tokens in push or whether they're sitting on an objective and can still do something. But now I have piercers really don't carry the weight for points. So in my next iteration after the Masters, I actually dropped one of the Naya heart pieces. I added a 3rd unicorn, but this time on a flying monster base, so you still have the same number of scoring units. And it's pretty easy for pegs and uniforms to get flanked. They just don't do much. But at least a unicorn on a flying base is able to still have 6 attacks on a flank rather than 3. And unlike the individual, the challenge with those unicorns that are individual is that even with slashes and crashing, sometimes they don't do a wound, and then they're not inspiring. So the enemy can then just go over them like they're not there. But with a unicorn on a peg, they can still block line of sight, and they can just go over him. So, and that also allowed me enough points.
Put a bit more items.
Yeah, a bit more items.
All right. So let's look at your matches. Before that, are there any boogeyman lists that you're afraid to face?
No, this is a well-rounded list. I mean, I really didn't want to face Jeff Radigan's 8 Scorch Week Ring Army, and I did get to play him on the last round. And we go through that in a moment, but that was the one list I was hoping to avoid, which I didn't manage to. But then, so did probably everybody else. So I wasn't the only one thinking that way.
Right.
And it's at least that's fast enough that even heavy shooting doesn't get to shoot for that long before you're in their face. I'm happy to face any list with my new iteration of this.
Right. Okay, so first round is versus Dustin Church with the Herd, 5 Tribal Warrior Regiments, 2 Longhorn Regiments, 2 Harpy Troops, Forest Shambler Regiment, Minotaur Chariot Regiment upgraded to the Stampede with Pipes of Terror, Chieftain with Horn of the Great Migration and Sacred Horn for extended 9-inch aura, Druid with Q2, Banchan 2, Mindfolk 2, and Conjurer Staff, Moonfang and Wild Father, 15 units, 13 of them score 29 unit strengths, a lot of them coming from Tribal Warrior Regiments. This first round is race. How did the game go overall?
Well, 19-2, so it went well for me. But when I look at least, one of my mistakes here was that I didn't realize that the Great Migration, the extra inch, applied to the whole army. I thought it just applied to tribal warriors and Longhorns and like beasts. I didn't think it applied to the Willfather and the Forest Shamblers and those kinds of things.
So did he get the first turn?
Well, no, he was really hoping for the first turn because he went up. He obviously before turn 1, he moved anything that was forest up to the middle of the table in his scout. And I wasn't clever enough, so I had things that he could have charged it if he went first, but I got lucky and I did go first. But I got an army that everything moves 20 inches pretty much, so I was able to flank those units in the center of the table and take out the Willfather and the Forest Shamblers all in one turn. I completely wiped out anything that was green by my first turn. And even though I turned around to face him and he, countercharged some of those units and did to do some damage back, when you lose, Forest Shamblers and Willfather before you have your first turn, it's tough. And when I see he deployed kind of center of the table to one edge, so I love that. I love that because I want to get in your flank. Like I want people that either, what I don't want to see is somebody that deploys boardage to boardage. I prefer to face somebody that's going to be deploying, that's going to give me at least one fairly weak flank so that I can crash through that or even just fly over it and come and flank.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this playstyle. I do play it very often as well. I call it the pincer formation. So you have very strong threats on both sides. So whichever is the weaker side, you will charge in, crush it, and then you turn the flank.
Yeah, so he gave me an empty flank.
So that's even better. So you just move up unopposed. Yep.
Absolutely.
So next, Marcelo 21 against Ryan Smith. This game is on stream. So Northern Alliance, Ryan Smith, we have went through his list before. It's the Northern Alliance with the Human Clansman, Horde Defense 5, 2 Icekin Hunters troops and 1 regiment, 1 Huskarls regiment with Elite, Snow Trolls Horde, Frostfang Cavalry Horde with Haste, Snow Foxes, Ice Queen, Lord on Frostfangs, 2 of them, and Trim. So this game, I saw snippets of it on stream. I think he has all his shooting on the left side and he took out your heart piercers. You were a bit delayed on the left, but you punched through the right.
Yeah, he was, the first 3 turns, he started really well. He was picking up a unit a turn with the very little shooting that he's got. But like you just said, he was really shooting my shooting and not the hammers that came to get him. And I like playing against Northern Alliance because it's in its current format, it's a very slow list compared to mine, which means I really get to choose my battles. I really get to double charge with my hammers, take out big things, and either his counter charge is too far away to hit me, or I'm using my chaff to hold him in place before I turn around and come and pick up the rest of the army. And poor Ryan had absolutely nothing left on the table by the end of it. Like I wiped out all 2,300 points.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I seem to see less people having screens in front of their hammers in the current meta. So like everything's in the online for you to charge them first. So that was quite an interesting observation for me. There is one Snow Fox's Swarm. I don't know where he deployed it. Do you remember, Marcelo?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Right, no worries about
that. But
I
got enough lightning bolts that I took it out pretty early.
Yeah. You have to advance fast enough so that by the time your screen gets shot down, you are your speed 6, speed 7 are already in range to charge also.
So with my list, I just need to make sure that my chaff is alive to do the job of picking my fight. Which means when I got all my shooting is prioritizing the opponent's chaff. The chaff is the first thing I want to take out, because if they don't have chaff and I do, I will win the game.
Yeah.
Very elfy.
Third round, Plunder against Jordan Braun. He's rocking Forces of Nature. This is the match I'm most curious about. 3 Forest Shamblers Horde, Scorchwing Regiments, Scorchwing 2 Hordes, 3 Greater Air Elementals, Glade Walker Druid with a Steed, Ring of Harmony, Shroud of the Saint, and Heal 6, Search 8, Kapoka with Heal 6, Weakness 3, and it has Aura Phalanx, Verdant only, and Wild Father. So that means Wild Father and all the Forest Shamblers get Phalanx, which is quite strong against your list. And so how did this game go? He only has 12 units, one less than you. 10 of them score 21 unit strength. So you obviously can't charge it in the front because you would get hit by Phalanx, right? So what did you do in this game?
So very much so, and he's got the speed of the air elemental. So when I face a list that's got 20-inch charging like I do, and he's got that, I play very aggressively with my chaff in that I send them off to the middle of the table, and essentially you either charge me and take out my chaff, which means I get to take you out back on return with my hammers. Or if you don't take out my chaff, then my chaff is going to charge you and do 1 wound and pin you down so that my hammers can then move up aggressively. And after you kill my chaff, they're going to take you out. And with all, when I look at this list, my shooting is going against Kapoka. Like I want to lightning bolt the biggest threat, and the Glade Walker Druid if I can get to it. Often you can't. They're very good at hiding it. And I want to hit these, Will Father and anything that Forest Shambler on the flanks. I don't want to hit them up front with those kinds of things. However, having said that, with my 2 Orders of Redemption, because one's got sharpness and one's got elite, they can double charge anything. Phalanx, no phalanx, it doesn't matter. And they will take it out. With 40 attacks, just crush 1, they will take it out. And I double charge them into a Forest Shambler Horde. And, I was able to get on the sides. I pinned down the Will Father by just feeding it chaff. And, by the time I wiped everything out, then the Will Father just got flanked.
Right. Did he place his air elementals behind the Forest Shamblers so that when you do take out the Forest Shamblers with committing the 2 regiments of Order Redemption, was he able to get a flank search onto you?
So what happened here is we were playing Plunder. The 2 2-point tokens were on opposite ends of the table.
Okay, you forced him to spread out.
So what it meant was that he went for his 2, and I just put some light stuff there just to hold him back, just to keep him in place. But I'm faster, so I was able to take my 2 and then come to his side of the table with my flyers. And then he was really facing me front and flank. So it did help that he gave me 3 double ones through the game. And just to say thank you, I only gave him 1 double one. But that 1 double one wasn't enough. And the poor Jordan didn't have anything on the table by the end of it. Like I wiped out the whole 2,300 points. He killed 715 and I killed 2,300.
All right. Wow. Amazing. So end of round 1, around day 1, you were highest in points at the end. So you were leading the pack because you had a 19 to 21 and 21.
Yeah.
So you were leading
points. I was about 10 points ahead.
10 points ahead of number 2. So you were a healthy margin ahead. And on round 4, you had a tie against the eventual Masters winner, Luke Frazier. And I think going into day number 2, the 8 undefeated people, most of them had ties, right? Even Keith himself had ties. So everyone was still in the running. after round 4. And I think you were still leading because you had such a big margin at the end of day 1. So let's go into round 4 invade. Luke is rocking the Trident Realm of Narratica. And
now I do have a couple of players in my region that play Trident Realm, so I had a false sense of security going into this game.
False sense of security.
Very misplaced and very
you have
false
some experience going in. So, and his list doesn't look anything special. I think everyone has said that, like, this looks like a typical list. 2 regiments.
Like, it doesn't look scary, does it?
It doesn't look scary. 2 regiments with of the Ram Placodum Regiment, 2 Gigas Hordes, Tidal Swarm Regiments, 2 of them, 2 Knuckers, a Coral Giant with Slayer, Naiad Centurion with Trident of something, Drowned Seas, and Boots of Levitation. That is a shooting attack that disorders. 2 Archmage with Wild Charge 1 Aura, Icy Breath 10, and Buckskin 5, Depth Horror Eternal. And he has the formation, which has two regiments that gives them Pathfinder, the 2 Mythical. He kitted out as a level 2 spellcaster with Gnome Glass Shield and Host Shadow Beast 2, because the 2 Mythical is quite a combat caster. The scenario is invade, so how did you end up in a draw?
So I'll tell you what, my biggest surprise, even though I have played multiple games against Trident Realms, against this couple of players in my region, none of I don't remember ever playing against the Placoderms.
Right.
And having
Defense
like defense 6 with Phalanx. Like, I got nothing that can take it in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, nothing can take it in the front. Even my 2 best units cannot take it in the front. So in my typical way, I'm trying to get on a flank. I tend to deploy my shooting in the center, my Order of Redemption either side of the shooting, kind of, center left and center right. And then my flyers are what's gonna envelop you and go to the front. So my biggest curse in his list was that Trident. Trident that would ground the right flyer that was about to flank him, or ground that unit that was about to pull him apart. It was a nightmare, that Trident. So I had a set of Forsaken on one flank just to hold him up, facing pretty much all his tool regiments. And then I had, shooting in the center. I had the Redemptions on the right, and I had also 2 Forsaken on the right. So I went heavy on the right, and he's coming up against the big heavy flank on my side with his Placoderm regiment of Gigas Horde and the Coral Giant. So all pretty tough stuff, that's tough to break. But I went to his side of the board, turned to face him, and now he's kind of doing a semicircle. But I've got, units on my center of the board that can flank his semicircle. But I just could not get in there. Between the
Trident
chaff that was, throwing itself to the front, and the Trident that wouldn't let me fly over those guys, I just couldn't do it. Now, in the end, I ended up flying over him and flanking the Gigas and taking them out, and then turning around and coming into the rear of the Coral Giant. So I started pulverizing that side. But he had a regiment of tools that was coming to help, and I chucked it out with my unicorn, did my wound. I was feeling all cozy and comfortable and got a very false sense of security, and didn't realize that he could actually
withdraw.
And because it's only, a cover
100 by 80, he could turn.
He could turn, see the rear of my Forsaken on the other side of the hill, because it's height 4, and and snatch a draw from the jaws of defeat by throwing those tools into the rear of my Forsaken
and taking them out
and crawling back a draw. He played it expertly. He was so exact in everything that he did that for me it was like a joy to watch him play that army. He played it so well. he deserved the title of master.
Awesome. Yeah, that's why, right? When you look at the list, it seems normal, right? Even if the Placoderm regiment was very scary, but it is not a popular unit because I think it is a little bit costly for what it does. That's why you seldom see it. But
I don't think it's costly. I mean, defense 6 phalanx, I would take it. Right?
True. All right, let's move on to round 5. And this is where all the best players in US starts to converge because a lot of them got a tie and now they're all smashing each other's face in. Round 5, Dominate against Nathan Clevenger. He's been playing Night Stalkers the last year and this year. I think the lists since last year has been similar. At least we know that the 2 signature Legions of Bloodworms are there. One with Hammer of Measured Force, one with Elite. 2 Phantom Troops. 2 Shadowhound regiments with Brew of Sharpness. 2 Hordes of Fiends, Brew of Strength, with one has Brew of Strength, one has Haste. Planner Apparition, 3 Mind Screechers, and a Horror with Vicious Aura for infantry only, Conjurer Staff, Lightning Bolt 3, and Binchan 2. Only 12 units and 11 of them score 25 unit strength. And this is Dominate, so he does get to push his Bloodworms up the center. Is that how it happened?
Yes, so you can see his 2 Legions of Bloodworms in the center, and those things are pretty tough to remove. And considering that he's got Elite and the Hammer of Measure Force on them, it means that they actually do a lot of wounds. If those things hit you, they do a lot of wounds. So you can't let it hit you. Like whatever they attack, they're going to wipe out. So I knew that if I was to charge them in, it will have to be with enough to take them out in one hit. And you can see that on his left and my right, I went in heavy to take out what was on the flank. There was these trees that was kind of keeping his hammers away from my hammers. But
the tree is working against you, right? Because it neuters your speed.
That's right. So we couldn't really charge each other on his left and my right. But you can see that I got my 2 Order of Redemptions pretty much in the center, one on the heel and one next to it, with a peg in the middle ready to chop things up. So I was able to throw the 2 Order of Redemptions onto the Bloodworm Legion on his left and take that out in a single charge. And then 2 units, one faced towards his right to the other Bloodworm Legion, and the other one faced to his left to his hammers on the left. So I was feeling pretty good then because I managed to crack him and then able to essentially be on 2 flanks on his. But those Shadow Hounds that he has on his right flank gave me a lot of headaches. They're very fast. They're pretty scary for, against the kinds of things that I had on that unit with my 2 unit of Heart Piercers. It was stealthy. It was so hard to shoot. I couldn't do any wounds on them or very little ones. So he brought them towards the center eventually, and that ended up taking out my Heart Piercers. And it was really my 2 unicorns that ended up charging it front and back and eventually taking them out. But it was a very close game, very close game. I thought I had it, and we ended up turn 6 where, I ended up my turn 6 because I went first, he went second, where I had a unit of Forsaken in the circle, in the center. He only had his Mind Screeches, and I had one of my regiments of Redemption that were just outside of the circle that I just needed to kind of, go backwards 4 inches and be in the circle to win it. And in the end, he did something really clever and used his Mind Screeches to just blow my unit out of the circle at the end of turn 6.
Yes, that's the worst. When the Mind Screechers has been lightning bolted, loading the whole game, you forget that they have Wind Blast, and then
Yes. So he played it very clever. He Wind Blasted me out of it. But if I had hit a turn 7, I could have put 2, unit strength 6 back in it, and I would have won the game. So, it was very, very close. He took out 1,345 points of mine. I took out nearly 1,500 points of his. So I took out more points. but I really needed a turn 7 and I didn't get it. So good on Nathan for being so clever with his wind blast. And it was a small loss for me.
Yeah. 6 against 15. Right. And that brings us to the spoiler alert round 6, where you fought the 8 Scorchwing Hordes, 2 Centaur Hordes, a Druid with Heal 2 and Alchemist Curse 0, and carries with the Disordering Attack as well. The shortest list I have ever on this deck of slides, with just 4 lines. 12 units, 10 of them score 32 unit strength. So Salt the Earth is the scenario. So how did this game go roughly?
So this was a bloodbath. Like we wiped each other out. He wiped out 1900. I wiped out nearly 1800 points. So it was a total bloodbath.
Yeah, because he has more shooting than you, right? You just have to push up and just start charging.
Oh yeah, I mean my 18-inch shooting does nothing, right? Because he only moves into range when you got 8 hordes, you're only moving into range when you can wipe something out. So because he's got all hammers, and I've got 5 hammers and 5 chaff, my only way to beat this list is to move my chaff aggressively, so that he's either charging my chaff and then I can counter charge and take out his hordes, or if he doesn't, then use my chaff to then charge his chaff to pin units down, and then I move up with my hordes, with my hammers. And I did that, but he's got a lot of shooting, right? So he didn't charge my chaff. He just
he could
backwards.
back up and shoot it off, right?
Yeah. So he shoot off 2 of my pegs, and I had 2 of my unicorns left to chaff him up, and I did that. And the Centaur horde on my left and his right, my 2 Forsaken that you see on my left, they went in and they took out the Centaurs. They took out the hordes behind the Centaurs. So I won that, my left flank. And on the right, it was very close. We kept taking each other out. Now I did make a mistake. You can see my regiment of redemption. My order of redemption. Yes, those guys. So they moved up, but stayed on my side of those trees. And they were pointing towards the right at a 45-degree angle behind the trees. And I moved up thinking that his hordes on the other side of the tree could not see me, and that I was safe on that side of the tree, but I was a bit too far forward. And they could just see me, and they came in and flanked me.
Over here?
And I gave that unit, yes. I gave that unit up with that mistake. I should have been far more thorough in checking against that flank. So that unit got taken out, and then my remaining regiment of redemption, that's a bit more to the left, they came out and took out what took my first unit of redemption out. And it got double charged back by 2 hordes. And he gave me a double 1, so they just held. So that was a lucky break for me. And
making that mistake,
and I ended up wiping out what charged into me, and it was very, very close. In the end, I had 1 token, he had 2 tokens, and one of his hordes that hit the second token almost gets wiped out, and it was like a second, a nerve roll that destroyed him, and then a second nerve roll because it was inspiring that missed by 1. It was just so close. It was very, very close. And you can tell by the 7-14 that it's another minor loss.
All right. And that is the end of our 3 players recap of their games. And I initially wanted each of the gentlemen to take turns to, talk about 3 games at a time, so that none of you have to wait so long. But
that's okay.
In the end, I switched it up because I think it's better for the listener to just listen through one player's games and then to the next. So I apologize for those of you who had to wait really long. But nonetheless, thank you so much, Mike, Keith, and Marcelo, for recapping your games. And these are your performances. Marcelo came in 8th in battle at the end of US Masters. He also won 2nd in paint. Keith came in 10th in battle.
Tied for 9th, technically.
Tied for 9th.
Schaefer and I were tied.
Right.
Very important because I've been ninth for 3 years and I refuse to go down. I clearly refuse to go up, but I also
You're
refuse to go
ninth for
down.
3 years, right? All right, ninth, tied for ninth in battle. Eric Schaefer is playing elves too, right?
Yeah, so
Right.
we
So not
top 10.
hanging on to not losing the title of best elf player. And Mike Rossi, you are somewhere in the middle of the pack with 69 points. Yep. So after going through Masters, what do you think of the state of your lists going forwards, or rather after seeing the results, after playing through Masters, how do you think your list did in terms of, do you expect it to do that well? Do you expect it to do better? Or do you think, it probably should have been worse? What do you think? Mike, let's start with you.
So I have a couple thoughts here. I am like I said, I've been to every Master so far, and for the most part, it is 3-3, 4-2, 3-3, 4-2, 4-2, 3-3. Right. Part of that is me as a player. Part of that is the armies that I choose to take, I think. Right. But if you take a look at the rest of the dwarves and where they finished, I have some math here. The worst dwarf player got a 50. The best dwarf player got a 75. But if you take those two out, the lowest and the highest, and you leave the remainder, right? Everybody scored between a 58 and a 73. So what that tells me is everybody, for the most part, were 3-3 or 4 and,
somewhere in the middle, average results.
Everybody, right? I think the grind, at least the way the dwarves play it, which is different from the forces of nature, get in there, fight, and then heal it all back up, right? But I think that the state of the game right now rewards, the Kings of War has always rewarded speed, right? With the idea being that you get to choose your targets, you get to roll your dice first. I put you back, you kill the unit, you turn if you don't blow it up on the charge, right? So dwarves have the ability to take the first charge most of the time, but then they hit back very mediocre, and then you just have your way with them the second round. You pick it up, you turn, So we all die. It just happens slower. I don't know if that style of list has a place in. No one's going to take a dwarf list and win Masters, right? I don't see that again. The first year Brock's, and that was all Brock's and Rocks and second.
Wouldn't you have said the same thing about Herd and Trident Realm?
I would.
No one's gonna take that and win Masters.
Well, let me. The Trident Realm I'm still trying to get my head around, but the Herd list, I knew Keith, the way that he played Herd was a lot different than just blocks of bros and as many stampedes as you could take, right? Like his Herd list was all over the place all the time. Marcelo was actually very close. It's closer to the way that it's an amalgam between yours and Keith's list. Yeah, right. It was designed to be very maneuverable, always be somewhere else, always put pressure on from weird angles. And if you want to kill a unit, fine, right? He'll make you pay and then he'll disappear again, right? The list was very weird. I don't know anyone else that was running Herd like that. But to your point, Marcelo, yeah, every year it's like, who do you think is going to win Masters? Well, if it's not Dustin Howard, it'll be some bro you never heard of, and he's going to take an army that you don't know. And how surprising, the Trident Realms list that had two of everything, where I was like, this looks quaint. He came in, he expertly piloted that thing and won the whole thing, right? But I don't know if, at least I don't think Dwarven Grind has a place, because besides the long range shooting, which is kind of expensive, it's good. And then you let the dogs out in second or third turn, and then you kind of don't have a lot of threat. You got three pieces that do damage and everyone else just dies slowly. Right. And I think there's something in Masters where you have armies that have 8 hordes of Scorched Wings or 72 quality shots a turn or whatever. You just can't counter the the threat projection. You can't counter the board control. There's a lot of stuff that you just can't do on the table with that list. At least that's my opinion. I've been playing these guys exclusively. I think, it's not all doom and gloom. I think the list is legit in some areas, but you're not going to win. There's just some scenarios that are tough, and the scores played that out. Alex Chavez is a fantastic player, right? He got 3 more points than I did, right? And Trowbridge is a fantastic player. he got 4 more points than I did. Right. Like, like the tier of play, these guys are playing at a level that's way higher than mine, but we're all piling in kind of the same thing, and we all kind of got the same score. Right. And I think I think that's an indictment of the tools that the list can bring to bear.
Why do you think dwarfs are popular, especially this year? It was very popular last year too, right? Was it the most taken army last year as well?
No, I don't think so.
It was?
Yeah.
Ogres. I think Ogres was.
Ogres. All right.
Ogres. Oh, everybody took Ogres, right? I think the dwarves this year were seen as a counter to the no pierce shooting.
Scotch wings, right?
Right. I mean, it's, I think that there's something to that. Yes, you're useless. Your weapons are useless against us, right? But all the other stuff you're bringing to bear is probably going to cause a scene, right? It's going to cause a problem,
And he's got 30 unit strength that he can put anywhere he wants to. And he doesn't have to go anywhere near you.
Right. And taking Jeff's particular list out of it, I think that any army that can bring Pierce 1 at 18 inches is gonna have a field day. Because what do? You shoot me, and then I run up, and you shoot me again, and I pick the unit up. Right? Like, there's no answer. Once I release the dogs, there's not much else. And like I said, these other people are way better players than I am, and we all kind of got the same score, right?
Yeah, thankfully, 18-inch Pierce 1 shooting is in the food chain is getting eaten up by 24-inch bowls, so that's why you don't see them as often as well.
Right.
And even your 36-inch sharpshooters will hurt them as well if they are not careful. Yeah.
Sure. Right.
Right.
But there's respectable. It's not like all the doors went in, or those lists went in and only won 1 or 2 games. They all won 3 games or 4. Right. They all were kind of annoying, and they all were in the fight for the remainder of the tournament. But notice how once you got to the later rounds, none of those guys were on stream.
They couldn't keep up.
They can't. They're so slow. Right.
I am pretty curious though, because I think in the current meta, at least, being able to heal or remove wounds is a very useful tool. You can shrug off some damage that has been piled up over turns. So let's say you have your triple sharpshooters against a list with shooting. If he shrugs off all the wounds you put on every turn, your sharpshooters will not be as effective. But when you go against a list without shooting, like you shot off Joe's Gorlock's Fury over 4, 5, or 6 turns because you just kept piling bit by bit, you piled the wounds on. I do think dwarfs have capabilities to heal in
not even close. They have the Iron Resolve aura off of Gorlock, and that's it.
Radiance of Life from the Stone Priest?
No. Well, yeah, you could do that, and it works on the infantry that will attack back and do 2 wounds.
Dwarf only.
Right. So it's infantry only. So Garrick is the key, because he can actually heal Gorlock, and he can heal elementals. Like, he can do other stuff, right? But he's a 150 point guy who's movement 4, right? So like you can get Radiance of Life, and you could heal everybody 1, and then they'll attack back and they'll do 2 or 3 wounds, because those defense 6 guys aren't putting out any damage. You want crush 1, then you have to be defense 4.
Right.
That's the way the army is constructed, right? So you're not hitting anybody back. That's why the formation's so great. The fact that you're picking up 25 dice on 3s, re-roll your 1s, and you stick a magic item on it, that unit has threat. That unit puts down 10 wounds. Everybody else stands around and claps and goes, look at what that unit is doing. Yay, right? Like, that's it, Whereas Marcelo's like, I got 5 hammers. They all move 18. This one has 20 attacks. This other one has 20 attacks. And look at that. I got 5 chaff pieces. They all fly. Like, I would love to run that thing. I would love to run your list. That sounds
you can, Mike.
Yeah,
come over to the dark side.
I need to, right? Just get out the paintbrush and start going to work, right?
Yeah. Well, notwithstanding, even with all these, I think dwarf is still pretty much in a good place.
Sure.
Maybe not easy to win masters, but easily able to be in the middle of the pack, right? 3 and 3, 4 and 2. They are the only army currently that can run a high defense list effectively, right? Defense 5 and 6 majority.
I agree. Well, I mean, you could do some really cool stuff with Northern Alliance with a lot of defense 5 stuff, and then throw
Ogres can do it too.
Ogres can do it too.
Right. Ogres with
And I actually think ogres
Huge
do it better
breakers.
because their character, everything
they're
scores
fast,
and their
though.
characters
Yeah.
do stuff and their movement 6, which I've heard people argue like movement 6 is slow, but I'm like, yeah, in
It is
comparison
slow.
to it is in comparison to other hammers and stuff, but it ain't 4,
Mhm.
you know.
Right. Okay. Keith, what about the elves? You have been playing elves for many years as well. What do you think is the state of the elves right now?
Honestly, I mean, elves are always popular. I think elves sort of pressed down on the meta a little bit. You saw that a lot when the one year that elves sort of disappeared from masters. A lot of the defense for infantry came up, which just runs for the woods when elves are around. So I think the army consistently affects the map meta. I think it can perform 4 and 2, 5 and 1 in the right hands. I think everything has to go right to win a tournament, especially if you're in a room where you can't get those giant wins to get some points, and that masters can be that. So I think the army's in a good spot. I think it will remain in a good spot. I think all 8 elven armies took the formation, so I think there's a little bit of pigeonholing. You can probably find about 1,200 points in an elven army that's like the same in every army, so that's not ideal. But maybe with the change, we'll just see some more new builds. The same token, like elf players are limited on what they can take as elves because they might face other elf players. So like you don't want to run infantry out there in bricks against other elf players. So they'll just rip up your 265 point Palace Guard unit. And like that was fun. Now I know what it feels like for everybody else. So, I think they're always going to be fragile. They're always going to be annoying. I think they're going to give middle player, newer players fits. And I think they don't surprise anyone because everybody knows that they're going to be out there. So I think that's one of the advantages that Marcelo's like Elfie alpha list has. It brings a lot of the same tools, but it's different enough that people look at it and they go, wait, I did how many wounds to that Redemption Knight unit and they're clean again? That's not good.
Right. That's not fair.
So I think they're fine.
I think I'm detecting some Green Lady envy from everyone involved here.
A little bit, right? A little bit. I'll be honest, right?
Keith envies the healing. Mike envies the speed. Like,
let's segue into Marcelo's Green Lady. How do you think it performs?
I think it's a very strong list that's been flying under the radar and hasn't really, been seen a lot because I don't think people have caught on at just how strong the list can be. I've only been playing it 4 months and I feel like I could have won this tournament. Like I'm still working out how to use it. I made some mistakes. I'm, changing the list to make it more effective. So I think he has the tools. When it wins big. Like, the first 3
that's
games,
Alpha Strike for you, right?
And 19, 20, 20, so it wins big. And the losses were very small and they could have gone either way. And, if I didn't make this mistake. So I think it's a very strong list and you're going to start seeing more people playing it once people realize, oh, it can deal with the 3 air elementals because you've got these individuals that can just pivot 360, charge 20 and ground that air elemental. And it's defense fight back. So it's actually going to hold and stay there and keep that elemental on the ground for actually 3-4 turns. And by the way, you can heal them. So I feel that it has all the tools to deal with any army.
One army that I find trouble against is those with a trash wall. So, for example, goblins, they put a horde of rebel in front and you have to charge it. And because everything else is behind the rebel. So if you send Pegasus or Unicorn, you charge the rebel, it's not going to take it out. And then they just back off and shoot down the chaff. And then it's still waiting for your hammers to go in.
Well, that's why I have 3 unicorns lightning bolting behind the rubble.
Yeah.
Right.
And taking out units behind the rubble, right? And you're moving the flyers, 11, 12 inches away from the wall of trash so that you're going to flank something. You're going to flank those things behind the rubble.
Yeah.
So when I'm playing goblins, I'm ignoring the rubble. I'm actually just taking out everything behind first.
Yeah. Yeah, the lightning bolt on the height tree really helps to see over the rebel and take out his tools.
Or 4 if it's a flying unicorn.
All right.
Height 4.
Yeah. And yeah, so thank you everybody for coming on. Mike, are you going to be playing dwarfs next year at Masters?
Oh boy, who knows? I got to make the team first, dude. Every year it's surprising. I'm always finish 8th. So we'll see.
You do
Right.
now.
Right. But I don't know. It depends how much painting I get done this year too. But if I was going to take something else, I would lean towards something closer to like, I think an elf list. I think a Sylvankin list has a lot of tools that can do some work. Right.
Keith, what about yourself?
I'll be playing elves of some variety. Hopefully
Okay.
not emo elves, but if the world requires me to play emo elves, I will play emo elves.
So you're opening to playing Trident Kin, Twilight Kin.
I mean, if they come out of the box and they're just broken, well, maybe.
We shall see. Marcelo, liking the Green Lady over Brother Mark?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a much stronger list than Mother Mark, and I got to learn them. So I'll be playing, for the next 12 months with Green Lady, taking them to the next Masters, and just really hone down and really learn how to use them and optimize them and
Right.
get better at it, get better with it.
I mean, just to piggyback on that, Luke Frazier had mentioned that, last year when he came to Masters, he brought Trident Realms and he finished 61st or some shit, right? So like,
Yeah.
he went and he just spent a year refining and getting rid of the crap and finding stuff that worked and playing it a bunch. And Marcelo, you're going to be frightening with another year of experience underneath your belt. Like no one's going to want to see you across the table. I mean, no one's going to want to see your army across the table, right? Everyone wants to see you. You're fine, right?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right.
All right. With that, thank you everyone for coming once again. And with that, we're going to end the stream.
You got it. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you, guys.
coming.
Word up.